across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. I've been away for a week and it's all changed. What's going on? I didn't recognise that man's voice at all. Anyway, it is Julia Hartley-Brewer's Talk Nation. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. I am back from my holes. Not as many sharks in the Red Sea, it turns out, as there are in British politics these days. That's certainly for sure. As usual, you've had a quiet one while I've been away. Nothing going on at all. Yeah, usual rules. But don't worry, I'm back. Thank you, as always, to the utterly fabulous, the brilliant Alex Phillips for sitting in the hot seat all week. And whether you are listening right now on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it's fabulous to have your company back again today. I'm with you live until 1 o'clock. Don't forget that if you miss anything of the show, you can go to my YouTube page. It's called cunningly The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You've got no excuses for not finding it on YouTube. Hit subscribe and you will never miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we are going to be talking about the government under growing pressure to close an asylum hotel at the centre of heated protests over recent weeks. The Tories have demanded the removal of migrants from the Bell Hotel in Epping in Essex, citing legitimate concerns about crime. But isn't that the case for every single migrant hotel in the country? Fresh clashes erupted outside the hotel yesterday. Organisers vowed to continue protests until it shuts, despite a heavy police presence. But of course, an awful lot of the trouble being started by the supposedly nice people who are very pro-migrants. We'll be talking to one of those people attending the protests a little bit later in the show. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has been accused of an obsession with censorship. Aren't all prime ministers, though? Amid revelations that elite police units will monitor social media posts about migrants to detect early signs of unrest. Yeah, that's where the focus of the police should be. Absolutely. Once again, they've got it completely and utterly upside down. Plus, of course, small matter of international relations. The Prime Minister is set to meet the US President in Scotland today. And with reports suggesting Keir Starmer is going to urge Donald Trump to ramp up diplomatic pressure on Israel over humanitarian aid to Gaza as yet another day of effectively a sort of a 10-hour ceasefire in Gaza so that aid convoys can go in. We've got an awful lot of photo opportunities with air aid being delivered, drop in the ocean of what is needed, obviously. But of course, no one seems to mention the simple matter of has anyone tried just giving the hostages back and downing their weapons? And maybe that would end the problem in Gaza. We will talk about all of that. Plus, small matter of the Lionesses making history last night, securing victory over Spain in a penalty shootout to retain their title as women's Euro champions. All that coming up, lots to talk about. I'd love to hear from you on any of the topics we are talking about, in particular about the Prime Minister meeting with Trump today. We're told he's going to discuss Gaza. He'll also be talking about the UK trade deal, still not signed and sealed. The US-EU one, it appears, was last night. But do you think that our Prime Minister Keir Starmer should focus more on tackling illegal migration here, protests at asylum hotels here, and all of the other myriad problems that we have in this country, instead of focusing on what's happening to the people of Gaza? Do you think that should be his focus? Maybe if you're going to have a cabinet meeting in summer recess, which he's going to do this week, it shouldn't be to discuss whether or not we should go for the utterly pointless exercise of recognising the Palestinian state. The state doesn't actually exist, with no one obviously as the ruler and no borders at the moment. But yeah, why don't we have a meeting about that instead of a meeting about tackling actual crises of violence on our streets, mass theft on our streets, the ongoing issue that we have with illegal migration? Why not have a meeting about that, something that British people really do care about? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word TALK and your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Love to hear your thoughts. Can't wait also to get the thoughts of commentator Sam Armstrong, as always on a Monday, joins me in the studio for the whole show. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I'm just going to have some fun now with you, because I'm doing this just to be cruel.
Yeah.
An awful lot of us, including a lot of people who A, aren't massive football fans, and
Yep.
B, are not necessarily big fans of women's football. It's not really been on their radar.
Yes.
Will have watched the Lionesses securing victory in the Euros final last night against Spain. Nail-biting, It went down to the final penalty. It was a stressful watch, as all of the matches have been. Big celebrations. There won't be a bank holiday. I mean, that would have been silly. I'm sorry. It's the Euros. Come on. OK, let's be realistic, people. But there's going to have a parade in London tomorrow, starting around midday. They are going to be meeting Angela Rayner. I don't know what I didn't realise we were punishing them. But maybe, I guess you get to meet Angela Rayner. If you'd lost the final, you'd have to meet Keir Starmer. So life's full of trade-offs, isn't it? Everyone in the nation is talking about this. Like, watch his face, everyone, except you. You didn't watch it, no interest in it, don't care, do you?
No, I didn't watch it. You couldn't have dragged me to go and watch it. No, not everybody.
You feel the same way about men's football as well.
I'm not wild about football, full stop. But I would just about watch when England play in either the Euros or indeed in the World Cup. And I will watch their group matches. I will watch through the semi-final, quarter-finals, semi-finals, finals, whenever we get there.
All right, there we go.
But I did not watch the final yesterday. The viewing figures will reflect the fact when they come out that so too did the majority of Brits not watch it yesterday. We in the media like to pretend that there is this equal status for the Lionesses every time they come and play. There just isn't.
I don't pretend.
Nobody noticed they were playing right up until they got into the semi-finals. Now we're all there. We're all partially feeling guilty that we haven't been watching them and following them. So we need to pretend that this is capture the nation in exactly the same way that the men's football has. There will be nobody at this blooming parade tomorrow. There'll be the tourists that have turned up.
I think you'll find there will be. There are an awful lot of people who do care.
Nothing
I think you're ignoring. I think a lot of women care a lot more than a lot of men, and also a lot of younger people do. I mean, I've got a daughter and all her friends. They go to the matches. Chloe Kelly scored the winning penalty, the decisive final penalty. Plays for Arsenal. That's our sort of family team. They go to the matches. We've gone to women's matches.
And how full was the Emirates when you went to the match? Half empty for the women's.
Okay, football. No, but way fuller than it was when we went. I remember, years back.
Okay.
So it's getting the key. No, I accept. And I've always defended Alan Brazil on this when everyone had a go at him when he was talking, with a fellow talks presenter about, the people care more about the men's fight. I care more about the men's team. I would absolutely lose my mind if we won the Euros or better, won the World Cup. I would absolutely lose my mind. It would be incredible. And I think the country would feel very differently about it because the competition level. But women's sport is coming on. My only issue I've got with these girls who I think are so impressive, and I love, they are just proper fun birds. They look like you want to go on the night out with them. They're normal. And I love, I think it was Chloe Kelly who said, "I'm so proud to be English." I love that she said that. We're flying the flag. But I do just, I do accept that, it's not the same as the men's game. I do accept that. But we can still enjoy a little bit of happiness in a miserable time, can we not?
I'll give you that. Just today.
We're allowed to do that. Right, let's move on to other things.
No bank holiday, though.
That would have been silly. But no, my issue with the girls is that they've never talked about women and trans women, i.e. men, playing in sport. It's not been an issue for them, to be fair, in that team, but it is an issue in pretty much most sports and at lower level football. Yeah. And I wish that they as a team would speak out and say, no men should be any involved in women's sport on the pitch. And I wish they had done that. But, we'll give them, we'll let them. Let's talk about Keir Starmer. Around midday today, he's going to be going up to Scotland. He's meeting with Donald Trump. Donald Trump's already done his meeting when he's been at his golf club in Scotland, best golf club in the world. And he's met with the European leader, Ursula von der Leyen, and they've held this biggest trade deal in the world. Basically, the EU have really, really bad trading terms with the US right now. They're going to be slightly less worse than they were. It's not a victory for them.
No.
We've got better deals, but ours hasn't been kind of signed and sealed yet. So trade is going to be an issue. But we understand one of the key things Keir Starmer's going to talk to the President about is putting more pressure on Israel over Gaza and about humanitarian aid. And we know the Prime Minister is going to be holding a cabinet meeting later this week in recess, unusually, to discuss Israel and Gaza, and in particular the issue about recognising a Palestinian state. Is this really where our Prime Minister should be spending his, his energies?
It is a shameful dereliction of duty. Now, I don't believe that Keir Starmer, like many Labour politicians, believes that he is chiefly a representative of Gaza and not of the people of this country.
He would if he thought it was good for him for votes.
However, there is no Labour Party as a successful political vehicle in this country without the votes of millions of British Muslims. Yeah. That is the reality. That is the electoral coalition that they have forged over decades. And now, more than ever, that coalition is in peril. So Keir Starmer has made clear again and again and again on domestic issues and now increasingly on foreign policy issues that he is prepared to sell the baby, the pram, the family silverware, everything. He doesn't care what the cost is. He has to placate those. And so when he could be going to see Donald Trump and saying, do you know what, British exporters need a better deal on everything that we're trying to export, when he could be saying, look, we need to do more to defend ourselves against our enemies all around the world, what is he instead using our precious diplomatic capital to negotiate? A better deal for a corner of the world thousands of miles away, in which there are, frankly, no Brits other than a hostage that is still there, and he's taking the other people's side. And he's choosing to put the interests of this country, once again, well below the interests of his own electoral needs. And it is shameful, and it is, if this was the Tories, Labour would be up in arms. If this was anybody else, if this was any other issue, if this was any other victim other than Jewish people, there would be national outrage. It is despicable.
I couldn't agree more. And the briefings we've seen in the last few days about from Angela Rayner's team. So, I mean, they are so big on sort of pushing out, she's pushing, recognition of Palestine. Do you know what, though? I absolutely love Donald Trump when he said about Emmanuel Macron, the French recognition of Palestinian state, when he just said, what he says doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I thought, what a great... Because it doesn't matter. There isn't a Palestinian state that exists as such. You've got two different... you've got Hamas and sort of Fatah supporting Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza. They claim some other territory as well. They're not actually in control of their own territory. Even in Gaza, there isn't a Palestinian... They are separated by miles. The Palestinian Authority and Palestinian representatives have been offered a two-state solution in their own state on two occasions when it's been, the whole international community, here you go. Yep. And they've rejected it because they don't want a two-state solution. No. They want a one state, and they want Israel, and they want Israel not to exist. They'd even talk about, expelling every single Jewish person in the West Bank. Well, how are you planning to do that? Because, funnily enough, no one on the left seemed to think that's acceptable in Gaza, but they'll not have a problem with it when it's Jews from the homes that they've lived in and even been born in. It is such a mess, but there is no doubt at all. And again, this links very, very closely to the issue of migration.
It does.
The huge level of migration we've had in this country, particularly from Muslim countries, Pakistan and others, where we have seen this massive influx of people whose vote, it appears, and we've known 5 constituencies at the last election, was more about Gaza than about, getting the bins collected and local NHS or local schools or anything. Our foreign policy is already being dictated by that, stopping of the tiny number of arms shipments we did give to Israel, irrelevant to Israel's ability to defend itself, but nevertheless, morally and, significant in terms of the propaganda it gave Hamas. But there's no doubt at all. Our international, our foreign policy, our diplomatic policy is now being controlled by the hard left and the hard left alliance with Muslim, I suppose, agitators, not Muslim people as a whole in this country, but the Muslim leaders who are, hardcore on this issue of Gaza. And that is dictating a lot of our policy. That is going to be not just damaging our relations with America. That's not a good thing. No. They're the world's policemen. They matter. But also with Israel. The only democratic state in the whole of the Middle East, and we are basically going to side against them. And that is what we're doing. Where are you in terms of the aid issue, though? Because so much of the footage, and I was actually out of contact with anything at all in the middle of the Red Sea for about 4 days last week, which was very strange to have no contact at all with the outside world. But seeing the footage of these awful pictures of emaciated children and babies, no one with a soul, with any conscience could want to see that or want a single child or anyone innocent to die. But the reality is, a lot of those pictures are are propaganda.
Yeah.
They're of children.
Yeah.
It's been proved, a number of them. These are children who have some congenital, horrible disease, totally unrelated to lack of food.
Yep.
Often there's a picture of a mother who's quite chubby at the back with the child. You think, well, that's, hey lady, maybe give some of your food to your kid. But there will be people who are starving. There will be people who are not getting access to food. Whose fault is that? Is it Israel's?
No, it is categorically 100%, and I mean 100%, Hamas, a terrorist organisation which has routinely, for decades, abused the incoming aid into Gaza. Quite why it needs so much aid, whereas it should be, frankly, building up its own economy, is another matter. It has abused it routinely in order to acquire supplies for terrorism. When Israel...
Well, they sell the aid. They sell the food aid.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise, the terrorist regime that runs that country also happens to be grossly corrupt. And I can tell you whose wife wasn't starving. It was Yahya Sinwar, who was hardly fitting down the tunnels as she escaped out of the country into a life of pampered luxury. This band of brigands that runs this territory have absolutely the blood on the hands of every single one of the Palestinian people that has been killed in this conflict. With the exception of a vanishingly small number, Israel has conducted this war in an exemplary fashion.
There will always be some, there are accidents, there are some bad actors, and there will be punishment for that because Israel does
in the history of warfare stretching back to Peloponnnesia, there have been innocent civilians caught up in warfare. I'm sorry, but this world that we live in is not perfect. Wars are conducted in the real world with real circumstances. And do you know what? By boy, they are made an awful lot harder if your enemy is hiding behind hostages,
well, you know what?
hiding amongst children, hiding in hospitals and schools.
You do not see the same number of casualties in Ukraine despite mass bombing campaigns by Russia, because President Zelensky does not insist that civilians, he doesn't hide his forces around civilians, and he doesn't insist that civilians have to stay where they're likely to be bombed. I find it extraordinary if people think that British and American forces have ever conducted war in the same way that Israel has, in a bid to damage their own ability to conduct a war and take on the enemy whilst saving lives. It is extraordinary. And the lies, the BBC, I mean, it's genuine. I get a tweet virtually every day from someone saying, "Oh, I deserve to be, in the Hague trialed for war crimes." Honestly, I don't know, have time to come to work or go on holiday or anything because I'm so busy, apparently involved in the mass slaughter of babies. But I mean, this is the madness. But one of the issues I really have is the charities that go on air and they talk about the stuff and they spout stuff they cannot possibly know. They say, we haven't got people on the ground, and the people they trust are the people who are basically controlled by Hamas to give them information. When it was proven last week, was it not, that there was a whole load of aid that Israel had said you can bring in, but they had refused to bring it in.
Look, let me intrude you into a little secret, Julia. It's not a popular truth, but it is the truth nonetheless. The international aid charities are just like any other organisation, a business. Frankly, they're a business. The bosses of these groups are paid hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of pounds. They rely on being the only people that can get aid into these places so that they can go to gullible Western governments and indeed to people who very generously give their money, not knowing that, frankly, it pads the pockets of high-paid executives sat in fancy London offices. What Israel is doing, which is attempting to get the aid directly to people, not out of any particular desire that it wants to be doing, it would rather have other people doing the job for it. It is doing it because...
But the aid agencies refuse to do it.
The aid agencies have refused to give Israel the assurances it needs to make sure that this aid is not being abused to fund terrorism. Because of that, because Israel has cut out the fat cats that sit in the international aid sector, they have been launching a massive international media campaign to denigrate and attack every single activity.
And then you get the Bob Geldofs on air saying about, they're literally dangling food in front of starving mothers and children. Again, just literally...
It's just a lie.
It's just a lie. But the other key thing here also that really, really frustrates me is that not that bothered about the starving kids in Sudan. Not that bothered about the starving kids in many other countries around the world where there are wars. Not that bothered about that. The only people they're bothered about are people in Gaza. Again, always difficult to work out what is it that's different about that dispute from all the other disputes in the world. But again, that all ties into the focus that's going on that, the focus on the left, and the refusal to deal with the issues in this country. And that's why I want to focus our questions today about, should Starmer be focusing more on tackling things like illegal migration? Again, get some tips from Donald Trump today. Don't give Donald Trump tips about how to pressure Israel to take on the terrorists living on his border and ponce around nonsense about recognising a state of Palestine that doesn't actually exist. And it's just, that is just literally, you want a nice headline in The Guardian. That's all you want for that. About the actual fact and the real stuff, get some tips on how to close your borders, how to seal up your borders, how to stop illegal migration, how to deport illegal migrants, because we need to be doing that en masse. And I'm talking a few million people who need to be out of this country. I don't care if they're living here and working here peacefully. You've arrived or overstayed your visa illegally. I want you out. End of. And these protests at the asylum hotels, and it's not just one, it's been happening in different parts around the country, not just in Epping. We're going to be talking to a guest who's been at those protests. And again, peaceful protests.
Yep.
That then the police, I mean, all this happened all last week, obviously lots of coverage on this station about this. Police, denying they were basically bussing in the so-called nice protesters, the lefties, the far hard left, the, Antifa type people, to bus them in their balaclavas. Yep. To then, and then violence and scuffles. Okay, and then, but there was a brilliant reaction in Epping yesterday, absolutely brilliant reaction, where people just were singing. They were singing Rule Britannia. They were singing Come On Eileen. Yep. Just basically refusing to rise to the bait, because these are ordinary Brits who, mums, dads, kids, who want to protect their families from having these hordes of young men living next door to them or living at the end of the street, where they're terrified for their daughters to walk past on the way to school. I mean, I'm sorry, we should all be at these protests.
Well, but here's the thing, Julia. Not one of these protesters outside Epping, day in, day out, are the sorts of people that tour around the country going to protest after protest, highlighting issue after issue.
They haven't got their carefully already printed placards ready, like the Socialist Worker lot.
Printed by the Socialist Worker Party, right? You want to know who these people are? These are people that took the side of the Soviet Union against us. They literally want to live in communist Russia.
They support Hamas.
They turn up on every issue, on the green issue, on the Israel issue, on this issue, and everywhere they go, trouble follows. And instead of standing up to them, the police forces of this country literally, and I'm convinced by the evidence, bussed them in, delivered them there, said, look, you go and protest them. And then when there's trouble, they say, oh, well, it's very important that the far right don't stir this up. I looked at the crowds of people who were there.
Well, there was some Union Jack, so obviously far right.
I looked at the crowd, and what I saw was it was very interesting to me. I've seen a number of protests. Firstly, women were very, very overrepresented,
and
children, older people. These
people who'd never gone on a protest in their lives,
were concerned. Why were they concerned? Because they chose to live in a peaceful, safe neighbourhood, a good neighbourhood like Epping. You have to work hard to live in Epping. It's a bit more expensive than the neighbourhoods around. And then what is thrust into the middle of their community, but hordes of fighting age men from goodness knows where, who have one thing in common, that they broke into this country illegally. And then surprise, surprise, we see evidence of criminality, including, we can't say much more about it, but
certainly people have been charged.
People have been charged with multiple sexual assaults who have been placed into their community, and they've said, no, thank you, no, we don't want these people here.
Police and Crime Commissioner, local people, the local council, everyone has said we don't want this, and they've got it. Again, Keir Starmer, a little less chit-chat about Gaza, a little less chit-chat about the Palestinian state, and a bit more concern for your own people and how they are living and what they want and protecting them. Just a little top tip for you, because you are absolutely getting it wrong right now. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. We'll get your calls, your texts and your messages. Up next, this is Talk.
You are not going to be able to stop it by having people monitor social media and delete a few accounts. That ain't going to work. That is not going to work. People are talking in the towns and cities. They are speaking amongst each other. You've got a party in power which just singularly cannot focus on this, cannot grasp it, cannot do what needs to be done. And yet we're at a time where things desperately need to be done, and that is such a toxic mix. They can just try and suppress people, which is what they're trying to do, but it's not going to work.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to your calls actually coming in. Let's talk to Peter, who's on the line in Croydon. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000. Peter, what do you want to talk about?
Hello, good morning, Julia.
Oh.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, sorry. In your last point, I emailed Starmer. I said, what are you playing at, having a cabinet meeting? And
did he email back? Is he good at checking his emails? I can't imagine he's good at looking after his inbox.
Yeah, well, I do it. Well, it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's got the hump because at the weekend he says I'm going to do airdrops, but it seems Israel snubbed him. So
well, the airdrops, and Jordan's doing, but the airdrops, it's drop in the ocean stuff. This is just propaganda. It's a PR exercise by these countries.
Absolutely, and he wants to play the statesman, and he's going to think he's going to change Trump's mind, but no way. I mean, I love your stance on Israel. I totally agree with everything you say, and Trump's not going to listen to him. No. Israel are ignoring the UK. And so is Starmer.
Well, and as Trump said, when Macron said we're going to recognise the state of Palestine, he said it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he says. Do you think that the Prime Minister should spend a little more time, and having a cabinet meeting, focusing on the issues facing British people?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's deflection tactic, Julia, because he doesn't want to deal with it. He doesn't want to deal with it, and he's just deflection.
I mean, bearing in mind, he's got a load of backbench MPs who are putting pressure on him and in the cabinet, and backbench MPs who want us to bring in a load of refugees from Palestine. I mean, I'm not sure the British people are going to be keen on that, but there we are. Really appreciate that call. Thank you. Keep on emailing the Prime Minister. We should all do that on a regular basis. That would be good focus, good letting off of steam. Perhaps not after a drink, though. Let's talk to Trevor. He's in London. Trevor, what do you want to say?
On Saturday, I was in Enfield. I live in Enfield, and there was a protest, obviously a Palestinian protest. And I noticed amongst some of these people, I noticed two teachers. One was a primary school, one was a high school teacher. Now, as they tried to give me a leaflet, I basically told them where to go. I'm an ex-British soldier. There's no way in the world I'm going to take a leaflet from these idiots. But anyway, What's my concern is that these people who are teachers and they're standing on the left wing protesting about Palestine, do they really know the full concept of what happened on October the 7th? Yeah. I don't think they do. And not only that, these are the people who are teaching our children.
Thank you.
Now, why don't they teach the children about the First and Second World War, which would be more in line with them about British values, about how we got our freedom? And the fact of the matter is that freedom on October the 7th was trying to be decimated by Hamas, who are still controlling parts of their own country and not allowing their people to speak.
Yeah, well, that's the key thing is these people always think they're anti-fascist. They pride themselves on being anti-fascist, except when it's Islamofascism, when they're quite in favour of it.
But these are the people who are teaching our children in school. If I had a child in school at the moment, I would take them out of that school because I wouldn't want any of those teachers teaching my children.
The propaganda on issues like Israel, on climate change, on trans, on our history, slavery. A lot of our kids are just being indoctrinated now. It's quite shocking.
And these people wouldn't have a say. These women would not have a say if they were placed in Gaza. They wouldn't have a say because Hamas don't like women speaking out. They're second-class citizens or third-class citizens in Gaza. Yeah. So they're standing protesting protest on the side of Israel, who are trying to free the people from these terrorists that have governed this country, governed Palestine for years.
It's honestly, I'm with you all the way. I find it genuinely painful to sort of the gymnastic, the moral gymnastics these people have to be capable of to believe what they believe. But there we are. So appreciate that. Great calls. Thank you very much. I'd love to hear people's thoughts in terms of these protests at asylum hotels. Should they be closed down? Is that what the Prime Minister should be having cabinet meetings about? Well, we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Reform UK councillor Darren Grimes, who's now deputy leader of Durham County Council, to find out what he thinks. That's up next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. This is Talk. 10:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong's still with me. Can't wait to hear what he has to say about my next guest's comments. Councillor Darren Grimes, Reform UK councillor, now deputy leader of Durham County Council, joins us to talk about where we are with our protests outside asylum seekers' hotels. A very good morning to you, Darren.
Very good morning, Julia. Good to be with you.
Good to speak to you. It's a great setup you've got there with your camera. Those aren't watching. I mean, that's better than sort of most BBC studios, mate. You're doing very well there. I love your work. Darren, I've got a funny feeling I know where you stand on this, not only because I follow you avidly on social media, but also because you've always been a man who speaks a lot of sense. And one of the reasons you do is because you're not from this sort of metropolitan elite that has looked down on people like you, to be honest, let's be honest, over issues like Brexit and over issues concerned over immigration, and very much the people who've been protesting in Epping and Bournemouth and Norwich and elsewhere around the country in the last couple of weeks, where there's a sort of view that, oh, look at those people, oh, well, they're probably far right, they're probably just, they're probably just racist, we won't take them seriously. But why should the government be taking very seriously the protests that men, women and children are making outside these hotels?
Because I think fundamentally, Julia, it brought together middle-class mothers and it also brought together working-class mothers, right? They were united with their sons and daughters in saying that enough is enough, right? After that what had reportedly taken place, which caused the protest outside of that hotel. Now, this isn't an isolated incident, as you well know. You've covered it on this show many times before, but people have had enough, and they've had enough of the lack of democratic consent around this issue. It's really incredibly dangerous for the ballot box to appear fundamentally broken, as it does right now. People voted for the Tories for many years, saying that they would reduce migration. Now they voted for the Labour Party, saying that they would stop the boats. Well, that hasn't happened, has it? In fact, they're up, and the more migrant hotels are being opened as well. And in my patch, we don't have many migrant hotels because, Julia, we don't have many hotels, full stop.
Yeah.
Right? But what we do have is cheap housing. So guess what government contractors are trying to do in our part of the world? And we're saying, not on your Nelly. But this is happening up and down the country, especially in deprived communities.
And
they're the communities, Julia, that need our support more than any other.
And that's the key thing. As always, the impacts of mass uncontrolled immigration, legal and illegal, is always felt by deprived communities first, because, you know, the middle class sort of council leaders and the politicians and people at the Home Office, that's where they put those people, because it's cheap and it's cheap for them. But that's the thing. Here, I mean, we look at the Bell Hotel in Epping in Essex, where these protests have been the focus, and in fact, you've hit the news. These protests have actually been going on for quite a long time, in terms of there have been people protesting about this, people writing to the council, writing to the Police and Crime Commissioner, writing to, you know, to the government, and not getting anywhere. So only when there were protests, which, by the way, were peaceful, until, of course, you know, the Hope Not Hate were bussed in effectively by the police. They denied it, and then there was video admitted, and then they had to admit it. And Hope Not Hate, which is literally the opposite of their job title. They are Hate Not Hope. They turn up, a load of people in balaclavas, socialist worker, all talking about how wonderful it is to have refugees. And of course, I'm guessing not living in their houses with them. Maybe they should take some of these people in if they're so keen on it. And it was only when they arrived that there was trouble, and then everyone focuses on it and talks about it. But the reality is, these families have been protesting this for a long time, long before even, you know, the alleged sexual assault on a 14-year-old girl, another one on a 16-year-old girl. We're seeing more and more evidence that these illegal migrant men, they're young men, fighting age, are turning up with very, very alien views towards young women, particularly teenage girls, and we're seeing more and more people being concerned about their children being anywhere near these hostels and hotels. What is the solution, though? Because people are saying we need to get them out of these hotels. Well, you get them out of the hotels, where are they going to go? They're going to go into, as in your area, local housing. That's even more of a worry, I think, for families who are living next door. They're not like, they can't say, well, they're definitely all over there, but also they're actually competing with local families on low incomes for that housing. So what is the solution, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, Julia, just to highlight that, because you make a very good point, one of my residents contacted me, and she was far too scared to actually speak out about it. One, because she feared there would be repercussions from the next door neighbours themselves, but secondly, that she would be smeared as being some kind of racist and bigot for having concerns around this. And she refused to speak to the press about it, because obviously I wanted to highlight the issue to actually show what is going on in parts of our country that are simply shut off from the media consensus. So you're right, but I think ultimately the solution has to be, we've got to leave the ECHR. You know, we've got to be able to actually get rid of people when they have absolutely no right to be here. And right now, one, there isn't the political will to do that, but two, we don't have the instruments to actually do that unless we just outright ignore the ECHR.
Well, the European Court of Human Rights, well, it's all very well to leave the convention or the court. Either way, if we did that, we've still got a load of activist judges in this country that will reinterpret, as they've already done, the Human Rights Act here in the UK, which puts that into our own law. There's no way in the world that Keir Starmer and his government are going to change those rules. He pays lip service to this, but half the time he's shouting that we're all far right for having a concern about this. And then he's going, oh, we need to take it seriously. Angela Rayner, again, she talks a good game, doesn't she? And she puts out statements, and it's all leaked that she's been saying to the Prime Minister, I'm concerned about this, we need to take it seriously. But at the end of the day, They don't mean a single word of it. They do think that anyone who is concerned about this stuff is a racist and is far right, and they think that we should all just shut up. And in fact, they think their solution, it would turn out, would be simply to monitor social media posts. Front page of the Telegraph yesterday. That actually they're going to set up an elite police unit to monitor social media to see if there's going to be trouble around asylum hotels. As if that's the problem, as opposed to the actual arrival of hundreds, tens and tens of thousands of illegal migrants of fighting age being put in our local communities.
Exactly. It's a prioritisation, isn't it? It's a prioritisation over these people, their safety, their security, and them not receiving any challenge whatsoever, over actually residents in parts of the country that Labour were voted in the last election in overwhelming numbers. People wanted change. Well, actually, the change is if you post something a little bit, shall we say, risque, maybe you'll end up like Lucy Connolly. Maybe you'll be banged up inside and your children will have to go without their mother because you lost your temper on social media over something that you are completely powerless to actually control and stop because the ballot box is fundamentally broken. It's dangerous for democracy, Julia. That's what I'm so worried about.
That's the worry, isn't it? Do you agree with your party leader who got in a load of trouble last week, but again quite wrongly, when he says the truth, everyone shouts at Nigel Farage, but when he says the truth, he nearly always ends up turning out to be right, which is that these protests are going to continue and things could get, I'm paraphrasing, they could get pretty nasty.
Well, 100%, because what do people do at that point? If you have concluded that there is nothing more you can possibly do within democratic social norms, well, what are you going to do? Therefore, you reach for the tools that you haven't yet utilised to try and bring about that change. I'm not advocating that.
I was going to say,
I don't want to see that. But what I would say, though, is that I think actually we need to take it seriously in order to stop that from happening.
Yeah. Do you think, just finally, Donald Trump is meeting with Keir Starmer today? Keir Starmer, they're going to be talking about trade. That does impact, British jobs. But they're also going to be talking, we understand, about Gaza. The Prime Minister should spend a little bit more time, and he's going to have a cabinet meeting later this week as well, talk about Gaza and Palestinian state. A little bit more time worrying about British people than worrying about people in Gaza?
Oh, Julia, I couldn't agree more. I just addressed a group of people in Gateshead the other day, and I said, I don't know about you, but Gateshead have had a Labour MP since, time began. And actually, they're focusing more on Gaza than they are Gateshead. Let's get a grip, for goodness sake. Yes, it's awful what's happening over there, but actually, it's awful what's happening here too. So can we focus on us, prioritise our people for once? Goodness gracious.
Also, Keir Starmer actually has some power to get something done here, whereas like Macron, what he says doesn't really matter over in the Middle East.
No.
Darren Grimes, always good to talk to you, Reform UK Councillor, Deputy Leader of Durham County Council. Sam Armstrong, listening to all of that, what do you make of it?
What surprises me is that there are still white working class people in this country, traditional people, that go every election and dutifully vote for the Labour Party. Listen to what they are saying about you now. Look at the people that this Labour Party is dealing with, of targeting, sending the police round to go after. They hate you.
It's utter contempt, isn't it?
The way they are filling traditional working class communities in this country with the people that they wouldn't have within 100 miles of their home tells you everything that you need to know. They see you as a dumping ground. Yeah. They see you as a tax base. They see you as a problem. They only care about you. They only care about you once every 5 years when they come around and knock on your door and ask for your vote. Other than that, they don't want to see you. They don't like you. They feel you're icky, they feel you're dirty, they treat you with contempt and disdain. The working class of this country need to wake up to the fact that the Labour Party is no longer a representative of them.
I'm going to throw this in there. I know you support the Conservatives, but the Conservatives talk a good game, but so far, after being in power for 14 years, they did the exact opposite of what the British people asked them and told them and mandated them to do on the issue of immigration, both legal and illegal. So again, that's why Reform are doing well. That's why Councillor Darren Grimes is the Deputy Leader of Durham County Council. That explains that. 10:47 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on all of this. 0344 499 1000. Going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk to Matthew Bryser about what might well come out of that meeting with Donald Trump today when he takes a brief break from playing golf. This is Talk.
we saw that last year at Southport, this has been the response of both the Home Office and two-tier Keir Starmer to weaponise free speech, all of the sacrifices that many generations, centuries actually, that England and Britain led the way in terms of being able to have free conscience and free speech, speak freely in our society, is now under attack enormously.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 10:50 is the time. Let's go straight to our next guest. He's Matthew Bryce. He's a former White House official working under the Obama administration and joins us to talk about, well, what might come out of the meeting that Keir Starmer is due to have in the next hour or so with the US president. He's at his Turnberry golf course in Scotland, of course, been there since Friday. And he's been meeting with various foreign leaders, including Ursula von der Leyen, who's flown over from Brussels, no doubt on one of her many private planes available to her at the European Commission. Not allowed to do that if you're a private person, but if you're a European Commissioner, absolutely fine. But the Prime Minister has arrived at Prestwick Airport for that meeting about midday. We're going to have pictures from that around 12:30. But Matthew Bryce, what do you think is going to come of this meeting?
Well, maybe Prime Minister Starmer will be able to soften President Trump a little bit on aid to Gaza. Trump and the Israelis are really feeling the pressure on that, as we've seen in the last couple of days. Now there's this agreement for a 10-hour pause every day for we don't know how long, a week or so, and more aid getting in. But Trump's not going to yield very much at all in any way against Israel. Then the other thing they'll talk about is trade, as you've been reporting in the UK. And Starmer would like to see removal of all tariffs on steel, on UK steel imports into the U.S. Trump was going to slap 50% tariffs on steel all over the world, reduced it, he said, to 25% on the UK. But there was a statement made by the U.S. Commerce Secretary Lutnick after the G7 meeting when this trade pact was agreed between Starmer and Trump that said that, the White House or Lutnick is going to clarify further possible reductions in U.S. tariffs on UK steel. So that's, I think, steel and Gaza.
So yeah, I mean, there's still,
Ukraine.
yes, indeed, well, yes. I mean, we know that, of course, yes, they're still trying to sort of keep the President Trump on side on Ukraine, or does seem that relationship with Zelensky does seem to be improving. Talking about, we'll come back to Gaza, but talking about the trade issue, that EU-US trade deal hailed as the biggest deal in history. It's a great deal for both sides, great deal for America, great deal for the EU. The reality is, of course, Ursula von der Leyen has got a better trade deal than she had, before yesterday for the EU countries, but nevertheless worse than it was before the tariff war was announced, big beautiful tariffs, but also worse than the UK has. A clear Brexit benefit. That said, both the EU and the UK still have worse relationship with America in terms of the tariffs than they had before those tariffs were imposed.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's symbolically important that there's this 10% tariff on the UK goods and cars and 15% on EU ones. That is, I think, an attempt by Trump to show support for Brexit. But you're right. The situation is worse with 15% tariff across the board for the EU. That's going to be tough on industry in Europe. Automakers, however, in Germany are happy because they were facing higher tariffs, 25% or more, 27.5%. Now it's down to 15%. But the initial reactions coming out of industrial groups in Europe today is not positive. That's true. And I thought it was outrageous that Trump said it's the biggest and most important agreement on any topic of all time.
Yeah, probably not.
Wow.
But remember the EU, I mean, they also agreed to buy $1 trillion worth of US military equipment, I mean, presumably to then pass on to Ukraine. That was part of that announcement a few weeks ago. But I mean, replace their own stocks, which they've already given to Ukraine. So I mean, the Americans definitely done better. Now, look, I mean, I mean, there's a time and a place for tariffs. We know that people have to protect. We need to protect our farms, our own steel industry against Chinese dumping of steel and things like that. However, a lot of us, including me, very critical of the American president's big tariff war on everybody. Has he, though, ended up playing an absolute blinder, and actually he's got a better deal for Americans?
Well, maybe for now. And I think one thing he's really focused on is raising more government revenue so that he can try to pay for the tax cuts that were just implemented. But, it's and a lot of the critics of Trump's tariffs say that, well, this is just a tax on consumption in the United States.
Which it is. I mean, it'll just put prices up still.
It is, but the 15% tariff, as some industrial groups in Europe are saying, could be low enough that the exporters into the U.S. will just eat their margins, so that they'll earn less of a profit. That's something I experienced, actually. When I bought my first car, I was a U.S. diplomat, and I bought it in Scandinavia, where I was exempt from tax, and the base price of the car was lowered by the manufacturer from what I would have paid, in this case in Germany, because taxes are so high in Scandinavia. So I think at 15%, we'll see the industry in Europe eating their margins, and more revenue coming to the U.S. government.
So we shall see. That said, of course, the whole point of those tariffs was he would basically onshore a load of production, and therefore you wouldn't make money from the tariffs. And again, he has three different names and all mutually exclusive. Yeah. Let's go back to the issue of Gaza and aid, though, because a lot of pressure on Israel, but a lot of pressure on America. Because they're the biggest and the most influential supporter of Israel. But, I mean, 10-hour pauses put in place. A lot of, the propaganda coming out of Gaza, I think, is and propagated by organisations like the BBC that my taxes go towards, I think has been utterly outrageous. And the use of some very questionable images of starving children who are not actually starving necessarily because of hunger, but are emaciated because of chronic disease, which both equally awful for them and their families. But this is a propaganda warfare that the West, particularly Europe, has fallen for, hasn't it?
Well, I don't know what the facts are really at base, because, yes, you're right. They're showing these horrible photos of these emaciated children. When you look at the numbers are actually quite modest in terms of the overall population, but it's horrendous what's going on. But on Israeli TV, for example, those images really aren't being shown, and many Israelis think that this is pure hype and that suffering and that starvation isn't happening. I mean, the UN is saying near famine conditions.
But they've been saying that for the best part of 2 years.
They have. Every day is about how healthcare is collapsing. There's no food getting in, no water.
And a lot of those aid agencies and bodies, they have been saying again and again and again that Hamas propaganda saying, 10 people were shot at this, by IDF soldiers. There's no footage of it. They weren't there. They're going on the word of, people working in the hospital and Hamas. I mean, I now don't believe a single word that anyone says, including aid agencies, about this war.
Yeah, it's very hard to get to whatever the ground truth is. And one part of the story that is not explained is that the reason why the trucks aren't being let in by the Israelis is not pure cruelty. It's that the revenues from those trucking companies goes to Hamas. And if you're in a war to the death with Hamas, you don't want to be supporting their revenue stream, just the same way we're putting tariffs on or sanctions on Putin's economy.
Yeah, it is quite bizarre. Do you think, in terms of, just finally, Donald Trump meeting with Keir Starmer, we're told they've got this little relationship, and we were told there was a bromance, le bromance between Macron and Trump before. Again, Macron invited to the inauguration, Starmer wasn't. I mean, do you think that? Do you think he actually does have a sort of a good relationship with Keir Starmer, or is it just all for the cameras?
I think it's probably good, as you and I have discussed before. I mean, Americans love Brits. Trump is no exception. He's opening, I guess, his third golf course now, right, in Scotland. He has been flattered by Starmer. Starmer, provided an invitation to another state visit.
That's what he wants to be at the palace. That's what he cares about.
That's what he wants. And he's the only U.S. president who will ever have had 2 state visits so far to the UK. So, Starmer is, I'm not sure that Trump, he's certainly not afraid of Starmer, not intimidated by him. Yeah. Maybe he thinks he's a softie, but Trump enjoys the kindness and attention.
Yeah, that's what it is, isn't it? Matthew Price, great to talk to you, former White House official. Sam Armstrong's with me. Do you think that there is a real sort of simpatico relationship between these two men, or is it just Keir Starmer is just literally licking? Let's be honest.
I mean, to be clear, you could not get two people further apart
on everything, personality, politics,
top to bottom. But say what you like about Donald Trump, he is a big fan of the UK, of us, of our history, our culture, and everything. This is the most Anglophile president we've ever had.
Yeah, we're not at the back of the queue. That's the key thing to know, isn't it? 10:59 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear the latest news headlines. Then I'm going to gratuitously make Sam talk about the Lionesses' victory again. Want to hear your calls as well? Get in touch.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it's an absolute pleasure to have your company. I am Julia Hartley-Brewer. Hope you already realised that. I'm with you live until 1 o'clock. Now, don't forget, if you miss anything of the show, don't forget to go to my YouTube page, which we've cleverly called the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Make it easy to find on YouTube. And if you hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about the Prime Minister set to meet the US President in Scotland. He's already arrived at Prestwick Airport. He's going to be heading to the Turnberry Golf Course to have a meeting. The meeting in about an hour's time. I like to have cameras and that sort of interminable yapping at the camera that goes on from about 12:30. We'll take some of that if it's interesting enough. We're told that Keir Starmer is going to be focusing on urging Donald Trump to ramp up diplomatic pressure on Israel over humanitarian aid to Gaza. He's also going to be holding an emergency cabinet meeting on Gaza this week. This is mounting pressure on our country to recognise a Palestinian state, utterly pointlessly, other than basically giving a propaganda tool to Hamas. But shouldn't we be having a Prime Minister who focuses not on Gaza, but places, as Darren Grimes spoke to earlier, like Gateshead, places like Epping, places like Bournemouth, like Norwich, where we have seen a number of protests outside those asylum hotels. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Also going to be talking about the Edinburgh Fringe. Often like to go to the Edinburgh Festival. I'm thinking this year that's going to be a no for me, because if Jews aren't welcome, then I don't feel I should be welcome. A Jewish comedian has been cancelled by an Edinburgh Fringe venue, and he's not the first. After attending a vigil for victims of the October 7th attacks, this man, Philip Simon, was barred from the Banshee Labyrinth pub because of alleged rhetoric and symbology linked to Israel. What the flag, and saying that he thinks that the hostage should be returned, which was all that he did. When Jews are not welcome somewhere, every right-minded person should refuse to go to that place. Plus, we are going to talk about the Lionesses making history last night, securing victory over Spain in a nail-biting penalty shootout to retain their title as Women's Euro champions. Not nail-biting, though, for my next guest. He's joining me the whole show, commentator Sam Armstrong. Good morning once again to you.
Good morning.
It wasn't nail-biting because you weren't watching it. You wouldn't have watched it. You will not watch it. You don't really get involved with most football unless we're at the big point of a major men's tournament, but you're definitely not interested in women's football. You are not, I mean, I don't think you are the majority now, but you're in a large minority. Does it matter? Not a jot to you. As a proud Brit, a proud Englishman, it was very interesting to hear Chloe Kelly, who scored the decisive penalty last night, Arsenal, our family's Arsenal, so that she said she was proud to be English. I was really, no one's allowed to say that anymore. By the way, we've had a bug in this studio, and again, we're gonna if we suddenly just grab it, we're trying to kill this bug. But do you not feel a sense of, okay, I'm not that bothered about it, but I'm proud? Because like the Olympics, I couldn't give two hoots about the long jump. Yeah. I really couldn't. Yeah. Or the sitting down sports on the horses and the yachts. I'm sorry. I really... But if we do well in the Olympics, I feel a sense of pride, and I'm really proud of those people. Do you not feel anything about the Lionesses winning the Euros back to back?
Julia, this time yesterday...
I'm trying, guys, I'm trying.
This time yesterday, I had my head in my hands. The country was going to the dogs. We had record migration. The economy was in the toilet. Everything was going wrong. But today, I woke up and I knew that we were the women's football champions of Europe, and everything all of a sudden is rosy. The sun's out. There was...
To be fair, it is better weather than yesterday.
I opened my door this morning and there was a chorus of singers heralding my way as I came into the studio this morning. Julia, I didn't watch it. You say I'm not in the majority. Look, I accept that people are getting into women's football a bit more, but the viewing figures alone ought to tell you that
they will be
not
football. Even a match like that,
a fraction.
It'll be bigger than any other show at that time. It will be up there with men's finals. Look, I accept. I'm sorry, as a woman, I care more about the men's game than the women's game. I would be much more excited by that. But the women's game is on the march. Yeah. They're really impressive. They play good football. Yeah. They play, I mean, I'm not a judge of these things, but you can see the improvement even in the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years. It is a good thing, is it not, that women are being celebrated for sporting achievement and not, I don't know, injecting filler into their lips. And I mean, when you look at most of the women who are on screen for most young women to try and emulate, you're the Kardashian characters. I still don't know what they sodding do all day to be billionaires, but having large bottoms and getting their bits out everywhere. I mean, I'm sorry. And you've got, someone who's married to someone who's an actress, at least these women, they're competing, they're hardcore, they've got the team, the camaraderie, the way they play, I mean, the way they celebrate. You want to be on a night out with these girls. Yep. They are proper good fun girls. I'm just saying, I like having these young women as role models for our young women in this country.
Look, I'll give you all of that. And you've seen similar growth in women's cricket, women's football in particular in the last few years. And they're catching up now with women's tennis, which has always been a sport which has enjoyed an outsized support.
And outrageously at Wimbledon, women get paid the same as the men, even though they basically compete for a fraction of the time.
But
outrageous.
You cannot tell me that it is of a similar scale, importance, significance as the men's game. But I open the newspapers yesterday, I made the mistake of turning on the BBC, and I wondered what kind of world I'd been living in for the past few weeks, because we have to pretend as a country, supposedly, that we're all massive fans of the women's football game.
Okay.
Nobody knows who these people are, other than once every couple of years in the games.
But that's the same for... No, sorry, the idea that people massively care about, rhythmic dance or ice skating, whatever the Olympics
all right.
are. We don't care about those sports. We don't watch those sports from one year to the next.
In which case, Julia, I'm prepared to concede that women's football is about as important as men's rhythmic gymnastics.
So I'm going to get...
polo,
I'll take
whatever.
that. I will take that. No, I accept all of your fair points. And at the end of the day, yeah, I do accept that the men's game is... it's a different speed, different level. I completely get that. And yes, it would matter more to the country. I get all of that. But it was still enjoyable. That said, is it just also the media, but also a lot of British people, English people probably more, given it was the Lionesses, actually are just yearning for some good news,
yes.
something that brings the country together.
Yes.
There is a camaraderie, there is a joy,
yes.
there is a pleasure in sort of, a winning goal. And those moments, and I live in London, in a multicultural area, because everywhere is these days, where you hear a goal goes in and you can hear the shouts
yes.
from everybody
yes.
in the street, that everyone's
yes.
excited. That we yearn as a nation for that togetherness. We yearn for that unity, because there are such divisions and people don't feel that they're sort of, they don't feel they can often be proud of their country. And I say Chloe Kelly saying, I'm proud to be English, proud to be in this industry, I'm proud to be English. It resonated with me, because I never hear people say that. Certainly not allowed on mainstream telly.
Yes. And look, I would say just generally across the board, maybe, just maybe, this new generation of sports players across the board, and I saw it at Wimbledon with Sinner and Alcaraz, are just a little bit more pleasant than those that came 10 years ago. And with so much getting worse, it is actually nice not to have the prima donnas, the diving,
There is that.
the divisive. And actually, I would say this, I'll concede this one point, the men's football could learn a little bit from the Lionesses about how to conduct themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
As to how to
here's something
leave
though that's
politics
interesting.
aside.
What's really interesting is this Lionesses team. Remember last time round there was a big whole thing about how all these white blonde women, and there weren't enough ethnic minority players, and they haven't done that. Now, I'm probably the only person who mentioned it, but it's noticeable that they're not doing that anymore. But again, there's no outcry when there's a large number of ethnic minority largely black men playing on the team. So people aren't going, where are all the Asian players on the men's team? It is absolutely fascinating how the different rules change every single time. I just find it so interesting, the things they pick. But at least, look, it's a happy story. The only thing that's bad, well, they're going to get a parade. Of course they shouldn't get bank holiday. We don't need bank holiday. Guys, seriously, the economy is absolutely into the poop with bank holidays. But they're going to have to meet Angela Rayner at Downing Street tomorrow. So, I mean, there are downsides to every silver lining of that. That is the cloud of the silver lining. Let's talk about what Keir Starmer's doing today. He has arrived, just as the Lionesses are getting on their coach to head home after that Euro title defence. Prime Minister has arrived at Prestwick Airport in Scotland. He's going to have a meeting with Donald Trump. They're going to be talking about, we've just been talking to Matthew Bryser about this, they're going to be talking about Gaza, they're going to be talking about trade, they're going to be talking about maybe Ukraine as well. Not focusing, obviously wouldn't necessarily focus on this, but not focusing on issues like immigration and particularly illegal migration. And yet, wouldn't that be a sensible topic for Keir Starmer to talk to the US President about? The US President was elected. A huge part of his election victory last year was about stopping illegal migrations. Was it 10 million plus people arriving in the States? But they don't even know how many. There were so many. There are tens of millions of illegal migrants in the United States. Half the economy of the southwest of America is basically run on illegal migration. But he has closed the borders. And it was very, very simple. You literally close the border. And they are deporting people who have no right to be there, starting with the rapists, the murderers, the thieves, the drug dealers, and the people smugglers. We have a massive issue with illegal migration, perhaps not on the same scale, but the impact on our country has been huge. Particularly the impact on our young teenage girls has been bigger than any other. should the Prime Minister not be asking Donald Trump, instead of telling him how he should treat Israel over Gaza, shouldn't he be asking for some tips on how to control our borders from the US President, who has managed to do that?
Well, you'd hope so, because Donald Trump's approval ratings this week are back over 50%. That's pretty difficult to get in modern politics. More people approving of you than disapproving of you. And the number one reason for the American public's massive support for Donald Trump, which, if I was Keir Starmer and my popularity was tanking as low as it could possibly go, I would want to know how he did it. And the number one reason is he cut the number of illegal crossings into the United States by 93%. 93%. Keir Starmer says he wants to do the same thing. Don't you remember? Smash the gangs. What has the result been? Illegal migration into this country is up by somewhere between a third and a half this year.
It's around the 40% mark, isn't it?
And it is, all the signs show, it is going to hit 100,000 for the first time. Six-figure numbers of people illegally breaking into this country. He said he was going to smash the gangs. What has actually happened? They don't even know how many people have been prosecuted legally. It looks like it's fewer than 0.5% of these people ever face charges. What do the rest get? The rest get bussed into hotels, placed in communities alongside the white working class of this country who, I get it, they don't really care about. And then once they're there...
The black and Asian working class also live with this.
Far too many people, far too many of these migrants immediately get onto further, and I mean further because they've already committed a crime to get here, they get on to committing more crimes. Who are the victims? Local shops. Who are the victims? Local young girls. Who are the victims? Each and every one of us that has to pay more on rent, more for hotels, sees more of our taxes going up and up and up, and enjoys fewer public services on the back of it. It's a disgrace.
It has a direct impact on us, and it's an extraordinary story of Birmingham. They can't resolve the bin strike. 7 months of not having your bins regularly collected, for goodness sake. They're dealing with them. They're basically bankrupt to all intents and purposes. But they're giving out freebies like, cut price tickets to watch Aston Villa, cut price tickets to the local swimming bars, cut price tickets to the cinema, to asylum seekers. Why? I mean, sorry, what planet are you giving those away to people who've entered the country illegally?
But Julia, millions of people in this country are every day at the moment, because of the state of our economy, having to make cutbacks. What are the things they're cutting back? They're cutting back the Netflix. They're saying, look, we don't need Sky TV anymore. They're making those sacrifices.
Well, we know they're not going out to eat. They're not going to the pub.
They're not going to dinner. I'm not saying that these are the toughest things in the world, but for families, they're painful cuts.
I'm sorry. People who've worked very, very hard.
Yes.
They're trying to rent or buying their own home, and they want to have some of the nice things in life. People who work hard and go to work all day have a right to have a few niceties in their lives.
Nobody that is listening to this show, has not had to make one of these cutbacks. And when they read in the newspapers that Kent County Council is paying for the Netflix subscription of illegal migrants, when they read in the newspapers that in London they're subsidising them to go around on e-bicycles, causing havoc, dumping them across the street, when they read about the little jaunts to seaside resorts, these people are getting put on, paid for by the taxes of people who are having to cancel the very same things. It makes people sick to the teeth. There was a deal in this country, which is if you worked hard, you got certain things on the back of it. You got to buy a nice house, you got a couple of cars, you got to go on a couple of holidays, you got your Sky TV, you got to watch your sports. That was the deal that existed in this country for 30, 40, 50 years. And it has been systematically, gradually, but nevertheless relentlessly eroded over the past few years. And who are the chief beneficiaries of it? The very worst people on earth, who have broken into this country, done so illegally, having left France, a safe country, and they are laughing all the way back to their 4-star hotels.
Exactly, and France don't want them. Again, we were told that by the Tories we're going to get people out of those 4-star hotels when that was first exposed. Hotels, a lot of people people couldn't even afford themselves, even for a weekend break, and we're paying for it all. But this is the thing: everyone's saying, and we don't know, there's protests outside the Bell Hotel in Epping. Again, that hotel at one point it did have families, asylum seeker families in, and then they closed the hotel down, and then they reopened it, and now it's pretty much all single men. Again, we've had allegations of sexual assault on a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. We know again and again and again, this stuff isn't made up. This isn't conjecture. Cases that have come to court of people who've arrived here as asylum seekers, murder, rape, sexual assault. We hear, these are people who are carrying out these protests in the last few weeks. They're talking about, their daughters being harassed by these men, being scared of their children walking past these hotels. I mean, this is a reality for people. And then, oh no, you're just far right. And we discussed earlier, the police effectively denying it, but there's footage of it, bussing in. They say, the nice protesters, the hope not hate. These are actually far left, full-on Marxist, Antifa kind of level, often balaclava protesters. If you're wearing a mask or a balaclava at a protest, you're not on the good side. Yeah, you're not on the good side. Unless you're doing it in Hong Kong and the Chinese authorities are going to take down, you're not on the right side of history. It is absolutely extraordinary. And I love the protesters yesterday at Epping refusing to rise to the bait of these people who, by the way, the protesters in Epping, they just printed out, they've got an M&S Union Jack carrier bag and they've just got handmade signs to ripping up a cardboard box. Whereas the protesters who've come, the ones who get bussed in, they've got, these are proper printed socialist work. Wherever socialist worker are, you don't want to be on their side. They're wrong about everything. They're on the wrong side. They are on the side of all of our enemies on every single topic. But they've got all their cleverly printed, it's all done professionally. There's an operation, there's funding behind them, as opposed to ordinary men, women and children who are protesting and want their safety. But it's fascinating. They just started singing at these protesters. They just sang. They sang Rule Britannia. They sang wonderfully, Come On Eileen. Yeah. Can you think of? I think they might have gone to Sweet Caroline at some point. Good old British songs. And I just, I applaud these people. Do not rise to the bait. Do not give the lefty commentators. Do not give the government. Do not give the police what they want, because what they want is for you to be riled. What they want is for you to be pushed, abused and pushed and frustrated into getting violent. Don't give that to them. Stay cool, stay calm. You've got our backing. We support you. You're doing God's work, guys and girls. You are out there. The mums who are there with their kids saying, I want my kids to be safe on the streets. You are doing a job that for this country, because they're only going to listen when people are on the streets. And I agree with Nigel Farage. This could turn nasty, but we need to all be going out and we need to all be protesting this. The only trouble is, if you take these people out of the hotels, they're going to be put into local accommodation, local hostels, local flats. The reality is they're going to be more of a problem because you're not going to know who they are and where they are. They're not going to be monitored in any way whatsoever. And they're going to be competing, those rents, they're going to be competing with local families. The real solution is that they're all deported. And first of all, actually a better solution would be that they never get here in the first place. Do you have any faith whatsoever that this government under Keir Starmer or the would-be Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, because my God, she's working hard, isn't she, to get that job, that they would have any ability or willingness to do that? No. And I Julia, I've got to tell you, I agree with Nigel Farage. I think we are at possibly the most dangerous point in my lifetime. And bearing in mind we've got the anniversary of the Southport attacks tomorrow. We're at one of the most dangerous junctures in history that has taken place in my lifetime. What are the people of this country to make when they see their police force, which by law is meant to be impartial, going hard as they possibly can on anybody that raises concerns about migration? They're now setting up some crack unit in London to spy on every single time they post a message on Facebook. Well, let's keep them busy, eh? When they lock up mothers for an intemperate tweet, which was wrong, don't get me wrong, but for 31 months more than people that are caught up in grooming gangs. And then on the other side, they see them bussing in far-left agitators, people who literally wanted communist Russia to invade this country, bussing them in where invariably
inevitably, they cause problems, in which they speak out against only one side ever, that there is a real danger that millions of people, and I mean millions of people in this country, simply give up believing that the very basic functions of the state, the police, the courts, the government itself, is a legitimate organisation. And I really do fear that we will see scenes like we saw last year, if not worse, if the government, if the police don't do their basic job. And what I'm saying is not, pander to people that are causing problems. I'm just saying act fairly, act neutrally. That is all anyone is asking you to do.
I was thinking, from my background, that the fact that I no longer trust any of those institutions to act impartially. And if someone like me has kind of lost that trust, that is, that is a worry. I'm not from a community that's been treated badly. Middle class North London girl. I should this institution is absolutely on my side. I know that they are not. I know that they are not. None of those institutions. And again, governments, the police, the courts, everything, they can keep doing what they've been doing. It's not going to end well for them. They can keep doing it, just like they kept ignoring our views on immigration, kept ignoring our views on things like Brexit and accountability and all that. You can keep doing that, but eventually we're going to give, you get more and more rope. The rope is going to run out. The rope is going to run out. The British people have had enough. And the key thing is, what I really need is the British people, you've got to stay peaceful, but protest. But crucially also, you've got to use your vote. You got to don't go, well, they're all the same, they're not going to do. Use your vote. It's that your vote is your biggest tool. So we did in terms of the referendum in 2016. It's what we did in 2019 to get Brexit done. It wasn't ideal. Lots of things happened, lockdown, all of that. Boris Johnson turned out to be an absolute, well, not most of us knew he was a fraud already, but an absolute fraud. But use your vote. Do not extricate yourself from the political system, because we might have to play a longer game like we did from 2016 to 2019, but we will get our way, because the British people will get their way in the end off. Simple as that, because there's no other solution. Otherwise, there won't be a Britain anymore. There will not be a Britain anymore in any meaningful sense. I want to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. 11:25 is the time. I'm going to take your calls to get your messages on whether the Prime Minister, who's about to meet with Donald Trump today, is going to discuss Gaza and the like, but maybe you should spend a bit more time discussing what's going on in Britain, and maybe you should be asking Donald Trump for tips on how to stop illegal immigration, rather than worrying about wars overseas. Give us a call to have yours say. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
There is real frustration around the use of hotels for asylum seekers waiting to be processed. And I think, we really get that frustration. We feel it too. We're doing everything we can to process the backlog. We've doubled the rate of asylum decisions. We've deported 35,000 people who had no right to be here. But we know that this problem is not one that we're going to fix overnight.
Everything you can? Are you sure about that?
Yeah, this is... Well, we have to come at this problem, Peter, from every angle, because this is not a simple problem which you can fix overnight. We've been really straight with people. This is going to take time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:29 is the time. Let's get some of your messages about Donald Trump and meeting with the Prime Minister today. And the Prime Minister going to be lecturing him on Gaza as opposed to getting tips on how to deal with illegal immigration. John says illegal immigration should be the first priority for the Prime Minister. Oh, wait, it's Starmer. He doesn't see illegal immigration as a problem. Mark says, no, it's not an either or. And Trump has no influence over small boats crossing the channel. No, but he might be able to give the Prime Minister some tips on how to tackle it. Don't worry, Phil says. Trump will tell him. And Claire says England should come first, not Gaza. Chris says, no, Gaza all the way. Interesting. Let's go to the calls. Janice is in Essex. And Janice, you want to talk about those protests in Epping. What do you want to say, my love?
Right. I was brought up in Epping, but I now live about 5 miles away, but still in the Epping Forest area. I was on a walk with a local walking group yesterday, and the walk started and ended at Epping Station. Towards the end of the walk, at about 2 o'clock, we walked along the back of Bell Common, and at that time it was just the Epping mums there, and it was very, very peaceful. We didn't feel threatened in any way. We then walked down to Epping Station where the walk ended, and some of us were getting the tube back home. And there were all the Antifa lot there. There were hundreds of them. They wouldn't let us through to the station. They didn't even have the manners to move out the way so people could get into the station. We literally had to elbow our way through. They were all carrying banners. They were shouting their heads off, saying that Epping welcomes refugees. Well, how many of them live in Epping?
Yes, exactly. Were they wearing their balaclavas and their masks?
They weren't wearing balaclavas, I will say that. So anyway, next Sunday I'm going to go along to the protest and support the Epping mums.
Isn't that interesting? Oh, you've been radicalised. I think that's what they say. You've been radicalised.
Otherwise I wouldn't have gone, you know.
Yeah, but that's the thing. These are local people demonstrating their feelings, and they're being told by people who've been bussed in, who will turn up to the drop of a hat of any kind of protest that it's against our country and our people, and so we're saying, no, they welcome refugees. Well, no, they don't. And again, they're not refugees. They're men of fighting age who've entered this country illegally.
Exactly. And, you know, I'm always in Epping. I know a lot of people in Epping. I know the feeling in Epping. And people don't want these undocumented men in our town.
No. Funny that. I mean, you know, mad right-wing racist views, but, you know, funnily enough, held by most people. But there we are. Janice, I really appreciate that. Keep safe at the protests next week. Martin is in Peterborough. Hello, Martin. What do you want to say?
Hello, Julia.
Hello.
Taxpayer here from Britain. We keep going on about parachuting aid into Gaza and that. When can we parachute some aid into our own pensioners so our pensioners can have something warm to eat in winter? Can we parachute them some gas tokens and electric tokens as well? It's called Britain. Let's put British people first in Britain.
I don't think we're allowed to say that. That's something. Remember Gordon Brown all those years ago talking about like British jobs for British people, and you know the whole of the media went, "Oh, what an outrageous thing to say."
Yeah, we're more racist now because you mentioned Britain. We don't even mention great anymore because we're not great anymore. We're just a dumping ground of Europe.
What do you want? That meeting between Trump and Starmer today. What would you like Trump to say to Starmer?
What I'd like Trump to do is to bend Starmer over his knee and spank him like a naughty little boy that he is for knacking the country up. That's what I'd like.
I hope they do that when the cameras are on. That would be wonderful, Martin.
Has nobody listened to the new Labour word anyway? Because when the Americans bombed Iran, it was, we're going to de-escalate.
Yeah.
That was all you got off the Labour Party for weeks. The new one is now pathway. Every Labour MP seems to say we're on a pathway.
Yeah.
And the pathway we're on to is destruction of the country.
Yeah.
We're going to be destructed. There's nothing left for us.
No, we're going to fight and we're going to save it. I promise you, Martin. Such a great call. Thank you so much. Going to take a quick break. After that, we're going to be talking to Alan Mendoza of the Henry Jackson Society about, what's happening at home and abroad in relation to Gaza and Palestine. And yes, we are, just for Sam Armstrong's enjoyment, going to be talking about the Women's Euros as well. He's shaking his head. You're a miserable old sod. You really are. This is Talk with Home with Common Sense and the Euros.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Thank you so much for joining me. 11:36 is the time. Let's talk to Dr. Alan Mendoza right now. He's Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. Thank you so much for joining us, Alan.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you for speaking to us today. Lots to talk about, home and abroad. Donald Trump is in the UK. He's in Scotland at his golf course. Keir Starmer's arrived already in Scotland. He's going to have a meeting with him today and talk. And one of the biggest issues is going to be about Gaza, putting more pressure on Israel over aid to Gaza. But also he's going to have a cabinet meeting later this week, an unusual cabinet meeting to be held during the summer recess. It's only just begun, where he's going to be meeting to discuss this, like the French recognition of the Palestinian state and pressure from more than 100 Labour backbenchers, and we understand the Deputy Prime Ministers and others in Cabinet for the British to follow suit. What do you make of both of those issues?
Well, the most interesting first point is how far we are away from the American position on this subject. It's worth remembering the Americans pulled out of ceasefire talks with Hamas last week on the grounds that Hamas was not serious about a ceasefire. So what's incredible is the Americans who are actually engaged in the process recognise the bad guys here are, as they have been from the start, are Hamas. They're the people who don't want to bring this war to a close because it means the end of their rule. They're not going to give back those hostages that they've been holding for nearly 2 years now as well in that sense. agreements. And as a result, the Americans are quite happy for the Israelis now to sort this out. That's their position. Meanwhile, here, where we've got no skin in the game, we've played no role at all diplomatically, we've had no sort of discussions about ceasefires actually with the protagonists in the conflict. Here, we're making grandiose pronouncements on the subject, far away from the reality, and it just shows how irrelevant we are compared to the Americans on this subject. So, you know, it's all very well for the Prime Minister to talk about this issue and for his cabinet to get excited about it. The reality is, as Trump said about Macron the other day, our statements don't really have any weight.
Yeah.
So what are we doing?
Well, indeed, I thought again, what an utterly pointless exercise. You know, Spain and Ireland and lots of other countries have already recognised Palestinian state, but there isn't currently a Palestinian state. There isn't one. You've got the West Bank, you've got Gaza, you've got the issue over East Jerusalem, we've got, Fatah supporting Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, we've got Hamas in Gaza, a terrorist organisation who's holding foreign hostages on the current side, and people are talking about recognising the state. I mean, I'm with the Israeli ambassador to the UK, Tipi Hotovelo, entirely on this, which is that this is basically a reward to Hamas for what they did on October the 7th and for continuing to hold those hostages.
Well, again, we come back to the point that who is stopping a ceasefire? It's Hamas. So how is it
And by the way, let's make the point that is something that even Qatar accepted last week. Qatar and America withdrew from those peace talks because basically Israel's going, right, for every hostage, we'll give you like another 1,200, 1,500 prisoners, people convicted.
It's insanity. It's madness on the Israeli part, by the way, but that's totally
completely
different.
I mean, it's we're basically paying a ransom, aren't they? But Hamas's demands are so absurd that even Qatar, who've been bankrolling them and their leadership quite happily, even Qatar went, OK, you're not serious.
Well, exactly. This is the madness of it. So we have the people, again, who are involved in the discussions going, Hamas is to blame. And then the countries that are not involved in discussions go, we're going to recognise a Palestinian state. Yep. How is that sensible in any way, shape or form? Recognise a Palestinian state at this moment in time firstly does border on the criminal in the sense that it does potentially encourage the idea that you're doing this in response to Hamas's actions on October the 7th. And in reality, all you have to do to get your way internationally now is to kill a few, 100 Jews, and therefore you get what you want internationally. That's step one. Step two, of course, is it's also an exercise in futility and stupidity because there is no Palestinian state right now. As you pointed out, there is a massive division in political control. We're unclear about what the contours of the state lines would be. The Palestinians don't even hold their own territory. Yeah. This is insanity to say there is a state in existence here. And you can say all you like, oh, we'll create a Palestinian state. It's about as effective as saying we'll create a state of Bordeaux and call it a new country. Who cares? This is utter nonsense. And it demonstrates once again the futility and the irrelevance of the Europeans in this debate. They're not putting any skin in the game to actually get a solution. All they're doing is trying to either appease domestic constituencies who've got riled up about this. That's a big problem. Or they're doing it to salve their conscience in some way, shape or form.
Well, it's virtuesical, isn't it? Because it's utterly meaningless. I mean, it is utterly meaningless, and they know that. But also, by the way, neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority have had elections in the last 20 years. And again, yes, let's support states that are doing absolutely nothing for their own people. It is utterly extraordinary we've got into this mess. I'm very, very concerned about this. But you've got the likes of Angela Rayner, putting out her people putting out signals that she supports the cabinet ministers and the 100 backbench MPs who are calling for this, and she's on board with this. But of course, we know this is a woman who, again, she'll dress however she wants to, unless she's meeting local Muslim leaders in her local constituency, when she's got buttoned up to the lines, long dress, and is all sort of, behaving as the second-class citizen she is when talking to those community leaders, by the way, who are all men. And this is basically kowtowing to basically, Islamist pressure groups over this issue. I mean, this is basically the party for Gaza. How much do you think Keir Starmer is going to stand firm, or do you think actually his fear of upsetting Donald Trump on this and his willingness to basically, lick the boots of the President of the United States means that he won't give in on this measure?
Well, I think there are two interesting points here. The first is that Keir Starmer is a lawyer, as we know, for good or ill, he is a lawyer. And he will be fully aware of the dangers of recognition of a Palestinian state when there is no state to recognise. That is not a something a lawyer would do, basically. So yes, there's political pressure on him from within his party because they're worried about the slippage of votes in certain areas. So there is that pressure, but he also recognises as a lawyer, and we've seen that, haven't we, in things like the Chagos Islands, his legal side coming out. It'd be very extraordinary for him to now throw that all to one side and go, yes, we're going to declare a Palestinian state, when in legal terms it's a nonsense. So there's that aspect which I think is going to hold him back. But again, as you say, that he and Donald Trump are not going to see eye to eye on this. No. There is no way that Donald Trump is going to agree to whatever Keir Starmer says on this subject. They may have some agreement on aid. Of course, the Israelis have opened up now. Yeah. More aid corridors. There's a pause in the fighting. There's more being done on that side already. So it's unclear what more they would want in this regard.
But again, by the way, when it comes to the aid corridors, I know, look, no one with a moral conscience at all wants a single child in any country to be dying of starvation. And they've got the aid agencies saying this is, human, created starvation, as is most starvation actually in this world. But they're very, very concerned about children in Gaza. We know a lot of this is propaganda, and it has been. These aid agencies have been talking about famine in Gaza since I think it started mentioning it at least in January 2024, and we haven't seen mass famine in Gaza. Yes. There is undoubtedly an issue right now. There is an issue getting aid in, but there doesn't seem to be any concern. I don't hear at all about what's going on in many other countries like Sudan and other countries around the world where there is mass starvation of children and innocents on a grand scale, a much greater scale. No one seems to worry about those people. There's no food aid being airdropped in for them. There's no meetings of international governments about this. Why don't they care about those kids dying of malnutrition and starvation?
It's not the Jewish state involved. That's why it's simple.
It's Come really
on, we know what the UN's. We know what the UN's sort of position on this is. The UN is terribly upset that it has been supplanted by the GHF as the supplier of humanitarian aid in the region. It shows, by the way, the UN is not the be all and end all, because the GHF is delivering. I have a colleague right now, Andrew Fox, who you all know is actually in Gaza. Yeah. He's there right now. He's been witnessing the GHF food handout. He will have reports.
This is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, sort of working with the Americans.
Precisely.
Basically.
Who are the Americans and Israelis have decided are the appropriate people to deliver aid to.
And it's not been ideal. Let's not pretend.
Well, let's say here's the interesting part. I think you'll find when Andrew returns here that he will, have some very interesting news on that front to show how effective it is. Setting up something new is not ideal. It hasn't been ideal.
And they did ask for help from the aid agencies, but the aid agencies refused.
Well, they refused because, of course, they don't want to have their racket, and it is a racket, broken up.
Why do you say it's a racket?
It's a racket because they're the people responsible for the aid development. They're also, we know the UN has been working with Hamas at various points in time on this sort of setup. It undermines their whole rationale, basically, if someone else can do it. There are reasons why the UN should exist, and there are reasons why it shouldn't exist. And for years, the UN has said the reason we exist is because we are the people who get aid into conflict zones. But they haven't been doing it here, and they haven't been doing it here because they want to do it their way only. And their way involves, of course, allowing Hamas essentially to steal aid. That's what's been going on in this regard. Yeah. So we can't, have a situation where a combatant is actually sort of stealing the aid designed for civilians.
Yeah, and again, there is no other country at war, and Israel is a country at war defending their own borders against a genocidal lunatic organisation that has said that their main point of existence is the destruction of their country and the murder of every single citizen in their country. They cannot continue with that on their borders, and no other country in the situation of that at war would be expected to provide food aid to the very people.
Well, there's something else, Julia. There's something else which is significant in this conflict. It is the only conflict I can recall in recent history where refugees are not allowed to leave the country. They're being told by the UN and by other agencies, you must stay in the conflict zone. It's vital you stay.
But at least half, we believe, want to leave. And again, I don't know why anyone isn't talking to Egypt, another Arab state. They won't open their borders.
It's disgraceful what's been happening here. The Gazan people are being used by international agencies as bargaining chips for their own politics, and it's a tragedy.
Can I also ask you just about what's happening back here at home? And this is not the first case, but we've got a Jewish comedian called Philip Simon. He's been barred from a venue at the Edinburgh Fringe. It starts in October, of course, the Edinburgh Festival, after attending a vigil for victims of the October 7th attack. He was barred from the Banshee Labyrinth pub because of alleged rhetoric and symbology linked I didn't know that word existed, to link to Israel. And his show is called Shall I Compare Thee in a Funny Way? And it's being cancelled simply because he went to a vigil held for people killed in the October 7th attacks. He hasn't called for he hasn't been involved at all in anything else. Even if he was, that wouldn't be an issue and wouldn't justify it. But he's not the first Jewish comedian who has been barred from the Edinburgh Fringe. Is it time to boycott the Edinburgh Fringe?
Well, it's time, surely, for the government to apply equalities law in this regard. How is it that Jewish citizens of the UK are now being prevented from exercising the normal rights that any citizen in the UK can do because, of attending a vigil or whatever it might be? I think in other cases because the staff felt unsafe, because there might be a reaction to a Jew performing.
Yeah, well then bring the police in.
Exactly. Bring the police in, bring the the security for the festival in, bring the Scottish government in. There is an affront to civil liberties in this country. And it's the government's job to react to that. Yeah. And it's not doing so. Of course it won't do so. And the situation will continue. Yeah. But this tells you how we're in a two-tier situation, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Some people have got civil liberties and can do what they want and others can't.
Absolutely. This is very, very, very scary stuff. And again, the echoes of the 1930s. I think people are crazy if they're not seeing this. It's coming up to 11:49. Next, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be hearing about the Women's Euros just to upset Sam Armstrong, who's going to roll his eyes again. But yes, we are. I also want to talk about Jeremy Corbyn's new party, Your Party, that's not called Your Party, but it might be called Your Party. It's difficult to keep up. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
Netflix have pulled the plug on this massive $100 million deal that the Sussexes enjoyed. But the fact that it is now official still comes as a bit of a shock to all of us, but not so much of a shock as it does to the Sussexes, who, I tell you, will struggle now financially.
I feel like this is just a perfect example of karma. They got their karma for sticking two fingers up to the royal family, trying to throw their reputation under the bus. And I feel like everything they do now, it just reeks of desperation, which is just so repulsive.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:52 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong is here. He's going to roll his eyes. Can we have him on screen rolling his eyes the whole way through this next conversation? Let's talk right now with Talk Sports women's football correspondent Uma Gurab joining us to talk about that. A fantastic Lionesses victory last night in the Euros finals, retaining their championship, retaining their win and beating the Spanish team in that fantastic penalty shootout that was as nail-biting and horrific to watch as every single one of those shootouts is. But Uma, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, what a wonderful night it was. They didn't make it easy. They haven't made it easy throughout this whole tournament, have they? And I think, you know, the final lived up to everybody's expectations. It went the distance. They had to dig in hard. They went behind to Spain.
Well, let's face it, no, Spain clearly in the first half looked like they were going to win it. Come on.
Yeah, for sure. And I think going into half-time, we were lucky not to be 2-0 down for sure. And I think at that point, you know, it could have been away from us, the game, but then something shifted in the second half and you just started to get this sense that nothing's going in for Spain and we're getting the chances. Alessia Russo, who's been incredible the entire tournament, stepped up, got her goal. Great play from her. And then, of course, you know, Chloe Kelly, the hero again. In 2022, she did it. She brought home the Euros for us. And she's made sure it's staying again. And England, you know, the first time they've ever won a trophy on foreign soil. Remarkable achievement for Serena Wiegmann, who wins her third consecutive Euros. She can't do.
Yeah, it's just another one for her, just another one for her. Look, there's no doubt that this is historic, this is big. Lots of people, millions of people have been watching it and enjoying it. I've said, you know, I've got a teenage daughter who loves her football. That was absolutely, you know, would have been top priority for her. She's abroad at the moment, but, you know, that would have been like, which bar are we going to be watching the match in? I've got Sam Armstrong in the studio with me. He's a right old misery guts. To be fair, he's not that keen on even men's football, but he'll watch the big matches in the big men's tournaments, the Euros and the World Cup. Tell him why women's Euros does matter. I mean, I don't know. Where are you? Are you with Alan Brazil? That look, women's football's fine, but it's nowhere up there with men's football. It doesn't matter as much, and which is where Sam Armstrong's view is, or do you think it matters just as much?
You know, for me, Julia, as a young girl who used to play football in the playground and I used to watch the boys play football, and I always used to wonder why I couldn't go off and play with them when they went to play it in, you know, professionally or play against other schools. This means everything, because this means that no young girl in a school will ever be told that again. She'll never be told you can't play football, because she could be the next Chloe Kelly. And I think it's, yes, of course, it's wonderful that they've won, but it's about the visibility. It's about the young girls and boys who've got names on their shirts. I know there'll be people who compare the quality of men and women's football, but I think if you're comparing it, you're going to rob yourself of the joy that is the game.
Well, exactly. But that's, to me, I mean, it's a terrible analogy, but it is just sort of, it's like comparing, you know, the over-21s or the under-21s. And they're like, these are different. In terms of the quality, it's massively improved simply because the women are now not amateurs doing another day job and then doing a little bit of training when they can. They're getting the money, they're getting the expertise, the physiotherapists, the psychologists, all of that makes the difference in the training. And that a lot of that comes down to money. They're getting the funding. But there is a difference between men and women physically. That's one of the reasons why, you know, I don't want men who think they're women playing in the women's game, because they have that clear advantage men have in terms of, you know, height, strength, power, muscle, their lung capacity, you name it. There is no doubt at all. The men's game is faster, it's harder. You know, any of those basic men's teams could beat these women because of that physical benefit. But we don't write off, you know, the Paralympics or a flyweight boxer because an able-bodied team or a heavyweight boxer could beat them, do we? We don't. It's a different competition, but our women are the best of the best.
Well, exactly. And, you know, I challenge anyone to come forward and tell me that yesterday wasn't one of the best games that they've ever seen. Forget men or women's football, it doesn't matter.
He's rolling his eyes again.
But look at Lucy Bronze. I mean, the England player who's just come out and said she's played this whole tournament with a broken leg. Hannah Hampton, the goalkeeper, who was told when she was younger she'd never play football again because she had a visual impairment. She saved 2 penalties in a shootout, in a final.
They were fantastic saves.
It's amazing.
Well. Yeah,
they were.
No, I mean, that's one of the things I really like about these young women is they're incredible role models. I'm always saying, but don't have footballers as your role models to these young men with these, roasting, you know what I mean, all of that stuff. These women they look like, to me, an amazing team. They're as good at celebrating their wins as getting their wins. You want a night out with these girls, don't you?
Yeah, they're incredible role models and they speak so highly of each other. They support each other. And that's exactly what you want from an England team. And I have no doubt this is the start of an era of even more success for them. And I think we should all get behind them.
It brings the money in, it brings the interest. More people go to the matches, there's more money, they get more sponsorship. And more young girls get the opportunity to take part. Right, Sam he's sighing at me, he's rolling his eyes. Sam, come back, come on.
Right. Well,
here we go.
Let's just talk, for starters, some actual numbers, because facts don't care about your feelings. 11.6 million people watched last time. That's down almost 5 million from last time around when 17 million people watched it. So the numbers are down. It's less than half of the number, 24.2 million people watched the men's game. So 12.6 million people in this country are just like me. More people than are like you, who watched the men and didn't bother watching yesterday.
Most Saturday night shows don't get 11 million people watching. They get less than half of that.
OK, but 5 million people. You say it's so exciting that all these people watched it because there's going to be money, right? There's no money for women's football. It's money that comes from the men's football. That's how this.
There will be money in the women's football when more women are playing.
5 million people watched it last time. Couldn't be bothered to watch it this time.
Right. OK. He's off. Uma, go on. We're going to have to leave it there. But unless you've got to quickly come back on that very quickly.
All I'll say is you don't have to watch them, but they're going to win anyway.
Oh yes. She won that one. I'm sorry, she won that one. Thank you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Uma Gura, talkSport's women's football correspondent. She has to deal with Alan Brazil as well, guys. Come on. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that as well. 0344 499 1000. Up next, I'm going to talk to Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, former Tory party leader, about, there's illegal migrant protests, where we are with Gaza. You name it, it's going to be up next. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. It's just coming up to, almost 3 minutes past midday. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Big thanks, of course, to Alex Phillips for stepping in last week while I was off hunting sharks in the Red Sea under the water. I appeared to have scared off a lot of the sharks, rather unfortunately, but we'll see if we can scare off some of the sharks in the political world over the next hour. Sam Armstrong is also joining me. Commentator Sam Armstrong is just busy being misery guts about the Euros. You've got no joy in your heart, no joy. Look, whether you're listening on a DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's great to have your company. If you have missed any of the show, grumpy chops over here, do go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You can hit subscribe so you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we are going to be talking more about those protests in Epping and across the country against these asylum seekers, i.e. illegal migrants, men of fighting age, being put into local hotels, as we've seen fresh clashes, but often actually the clashes are a result as of the protesters arriving against the protests, telling local people they're quite wrong to care about who lives in their local area. I'm going to be talking about that with Sir Ian Douglas-Smith in just a moment. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has been accused of an obsession with censorship after reports that elite police units will monitor social media posts about migrants to detect if there are early signs of unrest. This after Southport riots last year. Bearing in mind, tomorrow, of course, is the anniversary of those horrific Southport attacks carried out by Axel Rudiger-Barner, and we saw the misinformation, the disinformation, the lies, the lack of information, or every combination of anything to do with information from the authorities that led to those protests. But again, once again, it's about controlling what people say online as opposed to actually worrying about the thing that people are actually worried about. Plus, President Trump has called wind power a con job, claiming turbines ruined the view at the 18th hole of his Turnberry golf course. The president claimed wind farms damaged the landscape, wasted public money, and that was during his meeting with Ursula von der Leyen. We'll have a little listen to that in a few moments, but that may complicate his meeting with Keir Starmer today. We're going to talk about that and plenty more. Lots of top guests coming. Don't forget, I want to hear from you. I want to hear your calls, especially about Donald Trump meeting with the Prime Minister. Be round about now today. But Starmer, we're told, is going to raise trade, he's going to raise Gaza. But isn't he going to raise immigration, a massive, massive issue in our country, particularly illegal immigration? Donald Trump could give him some good tips, couldn't he? Because he's managed to pretty much shut down illegal immigration on his Mexican border. So maybe Keir Starmer should be getting a few tips from Donald Trump, and maybe also he should be concentrating on protests in this country about illegal migrants in asylum hotels, rather than worrying about what's going on in Gaza. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Still with me, as I say, is Sam Armstrong. Oh, you've cheered up now because we're not talking about football anymore.
Well, yeah, ladies' football.
He's off.
12.6 million people
Brazil.
like me. 12.6 million people like... There's more people like me than like you.
Let it...
I'm in the majority.
Let it go. Right, Sir Ian Douglas-Smith is joining us now, Conservative MP, former Conservative Party leader. Sorry, I'm going to annoy him now. Did you watch the match last night?
I did, and I cheered like everybody else. I thought that they they played their hearts out, and they showed something about English values such as strong resolve, never give up, as Churchill said, never, hold on in there and win one way or the other. We win. Yep. And I'm sorry, Sam, you're completely wrong. I would support England or any other team in GB that was playing tiddlywinks in some world championship, because I think it's a sign of real support for your country when you can support them no matter what they're doing and hope that they win. And I love the idea of England winning, and I hope the men take something from that when they go.
There you are. I'm going to make an incisive political comment to Sam now. No. But yeah, look, this thing. What I thought was really interesting actually at one point, I think it was Chloe Kelly that she said in one of the little post-match interviews, after sort of celebrating on the pitch, she said, I'm proud to be English. And it really struck with me because no one's allowed to say that. Certainly not on mainstream television anymore. I thought it was very interesting.
She was fantastic, absolutely. She was the match winner in my view. She and the goalkeeper.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a key thing for me, of course, is like these are young women. Well, look, we had a player, playing through with a broken leg. The stoicism, they get very different from a lot of our young people who apparently just have a bad Monday and don't go to work anymore.
Huge values on display yesterday, from gritty determination, tough women doing a tough job and coming out on top. I loved every minute of it.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. He's smirking away here. Anyway, look, let's talk about what I invited you to talk about. Let's talk about these protests. And it's not just happening at the Bell Hotel in Epping in Essex. It is happening in many different places around the country, in Norwich, in Bournemouth and elsewhere. Local people, men, women, children, saying we've had enough. We don't want to have undocumented men from foreign alien cultures put en masse into a local hotel or a hostel where they're living there, and we no longer feel safe for our teenage daughters to walk the streets. We're seeing crime, we're seeing sexual assaults. We are no longer confident and safe in our own local neighbourhoods. They're holding protests. We've seen the police lying about and then basically having to admit when the footage came out last week that they had pretty much bust in. You know, troublemaker protesters saying, no, we're happy with refugees in this area, even though they don't come from this area. That's why they all had to arrive by train. What do you make of these protests? And are they the answer to the British concerns, like British people's mainstream concerns in all parties about the scale of illegal migration?
We've got ourselves in a complete and total mess over all of this. First of all, we've got to get the numbers down, both those coming in and then those who are here, who are not meant to be here, who are clearly illegal. And there are many of those. We've seen the numbers piling across the channel. But there are also people who have got here and are here one way or the other who shouldn't be. And that's the key element of it. But the key bit here is that it was a big mistake. And I have to say that because the last government started, this government has continued it. In fact, increased it. Putting migrants into hotels all over the country was always going to lead to problems because, of course, they're there in the communities, on the streets, with no real vetting at all taking place as to who they were, where they came from properly. The best thing for us to have done would have been to resuscitate the camps. And if you've got people here, put them into the camps where they can be monitored. It's not a prison camp.
We have too many people.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest problem we've got, is we're allowing too many people in at the moment.
There are about 120,000 in the backlog.
Yeah,
we don't have camps that big. I mean, but if they're not in hotels, this is the thing. If they're not in hotels, and I think it's very, very wise, these people say we don't want these people in a hotel in our local area, but then they get moved, as we know, to cut the cost of the hotel bills, which sort of goes on a central computer and everyone can see the cost. But moving them into individual homes or flats or hostels, well, they're more of a risk to people when they're in the. But they're also then competing with local people for local homes.
And a lot of their kids can't get flats or houses. It's very difficult in London to get hold of anything.
So what's the answer?
Used up. The answer is, first, in the short term, and I was talking about short term, temporary, is to create the camps you put them into. They can be properly monitored. But in the meantime, what you've got to do is have a policy. And the policy of the government was to break the gangs, which is complete nonsense. They're never going to do it. They haven't done it yet, and the numbers have risen. So there's always another gang to replace the gang you supposedly crack. So the answer is, as long as people are prepared to pay money to cross in those rickety boats because they think once they're here, they'll be able to stop, work, do all the things they want to do, don't have identity cards, all those things that therefore might have stopped them. I'm not saying I'm definitely in favour of it, but I'm saying these are the processes.
That would not stop them.
No, but the processes are that we should now resuscitate the whole issue of the Rwanda deal, because it's only by showing that there is no purpose in spending your money, because the moment you arrive here, you'll be shipped over, put on an aircraft or whatever, and sent away so that you can be processed far, far away and slowly and properly. Even America now is using the Rwanda location, and parts of Europe are talking about it. The UK has got to sort this out, and with its reading of the Human Rights Act, I'm afraid we're going to have to deal with this. There's no question to it. We cannot allow ourselves to go on being overruled as a government, any government which has been elected to protect the borders of this country, being overruled by judges who, frankly, are quite often haven't a clue about practicalities in terms of...
Well, that's the thing. It's all very well people talking, leave the European Court of Human Rights, European Convention, but at the end of the day, these rules are basically in our own legal framework. They're in the Human Rights Act, and it's about the interpretation. And again, you only have to read Article 8, both paragraphs, not just the first one about the right to family and private life, to know that every single one of the people who's been allowed to stay, who's been on the front page, you know, the Mail or the Telegraph every day, these absurd cases, you know, the chicken nuggets, the paedophile allowed to stay because to have a family life with his kids that he's not even allowed to see unsupervised because a paedophile. These cases, every single one of these would have been thrown out if you read both paragraphs of Article 8. We're going to have to get rid of European Court of Human Rights, European Convention and the Human Rights Act and most of our activist judges.
Well, what you do is you cut off the supply line to the judges, which makes them no longer activist. They've been given the excuse. It was a mistake of Blair to wind the ECHR into national legislation because that's basically meant the judges now can overrule acts of Parliament, overrule judgments made in Parliament. And so the reality here is we've got to cut that umbilical link. And I have to tell you, as many other countries in Europe are now saying, it is time to overhaul the Human Rights Act. As you said quite rightly, there are two elements almost to every single article in there, and you can pick and choose which bit you wish to use. The answer is stop being ambivalent, be very clear. The ultimate decision on this lies for the democratically elected governments who are the Supreme Court, and that cannot be overruled.
But this is the interesting thing. You've got, you know, a leader in Friedrich Merz in Germany, a German chancellor with the coalition government, they were able to cut legal entries to asylum seekers to the German border, I mean, by 40%, virtually overnight, by just saying, unless you're clearly legitimate or you're a pregnant woman, you ain't, you know, these undocumented young men, you ain't coming in, end of. They kind of solved that problem. Do you think there's any chance that, given that your lot, the Tories, I know you haven't been in government yourself for a long time, but the Tory government, where we thought that they were elected on a promise and a manifesto to deal with these issues. We thought they actually did. They talked a good game, but they didn't do anything. The problem has got a lot worse. But the Tories failed in it. Labour don't even think they've got the will, let alone, you know, the ability to deal with this issue. Do you think that Donald Trump could perhaps give Keir Starmer some tips at the meeting he's holding with him right now about how to actually make our borders secure? Because he's done a pretty good job on the Mexican border.
I'm sure he will, but of course with him, he's not subject to a court that lives outside of the USA, and that's the key. And the USA is always very clear about the way that they leave the final decisions. Obviously, there are challenges from their Supreme Court, but the reality is the Supreme Court normally gives way on elements to do with this, the border, and on those human rights issues. So the main problem we've got to face up to is you've got to get rid of the pull factor. The biggest pull factor is that when you come here, you can get work and whatever. That's their view, whether you think it's right or wrong. You've got to get rid of that. And the only way to do that is what Australia did, which showed categorically, had a huge impact, which is to say, no, when you come here, you will not be processed here. You will be processed far away. And if you are found not to be relevant to the application you've made, then off you go. But you'll be going from somewhere further away than where you came from, almost certainly. So that immediately, when we actually announced it out originally, you could see this for twofold. First of all, the numbers trying to cross went down. And secondly, those who were here illegally started crossing into Ireland.
Yes.
Protect themselves against it. That was very clear evidence that this policy would work. The government's got to say, we made a mistake. We should reinvigorate that deal and we should get on with it, because they will never get control of this until people realise spending thousands of pounds of your hard-earned savings is not going to get you secure into the UK. That will end it. And the rest of it is to get those who are illegally out. And that's the second part of the problem.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Are the protests in places like Epping, Bournemouth, Norwich and others, are they part of the answer? Because, at the end of the day, until, things like the Deliveroo and Uber Eats, the illegal working, these companies, their entire basis for which they make a profit is based on paying people wages that are so low that only an illegal migrant really is going to be able to do it because they're not paying tax on it. You can't pay your rent on those sort of incomes. We've got whole businesses that are basically based on illegal workers across the board. We've got everyone at these migrant hotels and hostels knew perfectly well what was going on. The authorities would have known what was going on. The people employing them knew what was going on. And until it's on the front page of the Sun, or until people are protesting and mums and dads and kids are standing outside a hotel and saying, no, we've had enough now, nothing actually gets done. Are more protests, peaceful protests, are they the answer?
Well, they're certainly going to happen. There's nothing much anyone can do to stop them because people are frustrated because it always happens when they feel they're not being listened to, when they feel that they're
Well, they're not being listened to. It's not a feeling. They're not being.
Yeah, but that's their point. So they will then take to the streets themselves, and also they feel as though they're treated as if they're extremists because they're concerned about. You saw in Essex there, somebody was a girl was attacked by one of the guys from the.
Well, it's alleged. He's been charged, but it's obviously alleged. It's now obviously.
Well, it doesn't matter. My point is making that is what then happens in the view, and the other bit was that the police made a major mistake. Yes, people are allowed to protest. Of course you want to protest in favour, by all means protest. But do not allow them to protest on the site if there is another protest of local people happening. It's utterly daft to escort them to the site where there is more likely to be trouble. If they want to protest, take them into the station car park and let them protest there, well away from the site. It's quite ridiculous for them to think that their job was to escort them safely. Their job was not to escort them safely, but to contain them safely.
But again, it's two-tier. But it's two-tier policing. We're exactly back where we were. We've got the anniversary of the Southport attacks tomorrow, and the riots that came about as a result of that, and the protests. Now, we're exactly in the same territory where different groups of people are treated completely differently by the police.
Well, that's another bit to settle, which is that the police have got to stop, I think, second-guessing what they think might be right, but go by the letter of the law. The problem is, if it's not working, then we have to change it. And the reality for us is the police's job is basically to keep the peace. And I would think the last thing you need to keep the peace is to allow two rival gangs. Imagine if those endless marches that have taken place in central London in favour of Hamas in many cases. Imagine if there had been a counter-Jewish march that wanted to come there. Do you think the police would have escorted them into the middle of that? Certainly not.
Well, in fact, they've actually taken people away simply for looking Jewish.
So the key thing here is, if you want balance, treat everybody exactly the same. And the answer is yes, if people wish to protest. OK, that's their legal right, but it doesn't mean to say you allow a second protest to be taken to the place of the protest. And how bonkers is that?
Just finally, with the revelation yesterday in the Telegraph that they're setting up sort of elite police units to monitor social media to see if there are going to be troubles, basically to see the early brewing of if there's going to be trouble. We are once again talking about monitoring what people are saying and doing online rather than dealing with the underlying concern.
This becomes like George Orwell's Big Brother. You're being listened to and watched at every single occasion. My answer to this is, look, what people often say doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do things. We have to be infinitely more tolerant about that because comedians say stuff which makes people laugh. What, are we going to shut that down as well while we're at it?
They would. Yeah, they would.
And the trouble is, the more we shut down, the more angry people get. The answer is, the British system of English common law, particularly in England here, which other countries around the world have taken, which is the best legal system in the world, which says basically if it's not broke, don't fix it. The answer, therefore, is you tolerate. You give people the right to speak, allow them to live their lives. If they begin to threaten others or whatever, then that's different. But up until then, don't second guess what's in their heads. As Queen Elizabeth said, I judge nobody by what's in their hearts. It's their actions that matter and not what you think they mean by something. And that's the most desperate business when you hand that over to government or to policing authorities. It should immediately be stopped.
Sir Ian Douglas-Smith, always great to talk to you, Conservative MP, former Conservative Party leader as well. Thank you very much. Sam Armstrong, this time I know you do a lot of work with the Free Speech Union. And this is a really, really big issue with it. Two-tier policing, two-tier justice generally. Just the clear taking of sides, whether it's about protests about in Southport, whether it's about what's been happening, these protests in Epping. I mean, it's happening on a daily basis, and so much of it is the police and the authorities making a judgment. And whether it's the Hamas protests as well. I mean, the problem is they are hate marches. Suella Braverman was right. Whether they're making a judgment on who is morally right and who's morally wrong.
Yeah, and I want to make a couple of points, but first thing I want to say is that this is not the fault of individual police officers. I mean, at the Free Speech Union, we deal with a lot of criminal cases to go through. I cannot tell you how many police interviews start with, just before I put the tape on, I just want to say, it's not really my choice that we're doing this today, but I've got to ask you these questions. Every single day we see someone arrested for something they say online. It starts with that, because this is being forced on ordinary policemen by a senior leadership that are in hock to our woke madness.
Yeah. You don't get the job unless you are.
Correct.
Simple as that.
Second thing I would say, though, is this is really, and I mean really dangerous, because if the people of this country lose faith in the police to be the ones that deal with crime, to keep our communities safe, to tackle the problems that every society has, well, that sort of thing has been tried around the world, and everywhere it's tried, people take the law into their own hands, and that gets dangerous quickly. We need the police. We all need the police. Policemen are heroes. They really are. They put themselves in the line of danger day in, day out. But when they lose sight of it, and when people start taking the law into their own hands, because they will, if they can't rely on the police to do it, things get scary very quickly. So I'd make an appeal right now to the police chiefs of this country. Please, please do your job. Just go back to doing what police forces in this country have done for a very long time. Because if you don't, we are in for a very, very dangerous summer indeed.
Absolutely. 12:22 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on that. We'll get your calls in a few moments. First up, after a quick break, we're going to be talking to Orla Minihane, who was a Reform candidate for Epping, and she was at the protest yesterday. We're going to get her account up next. This is Talk.
Netflix have pulled the plug on this massive $100 million deal that the Sussexes enjoyed. But the fact that it is now official still comes as a bit of a shock to all of us, but not so much of a shock as it does to the Sussexes, who, I tell you, will struggle now financially.
I feel like this is just a perfect example of karma. They got their karma for sticking two fingers up to the royal family, trying to throw their reputation under the bus. And I feel like everything they do now, it just reeks of desperation, which is just so repulsive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 12:26 is the time. Well, Julia Hartley-Brewer and Sam Armstrong still with. We've just been talking about those protests in Epping. Well, let's talk to someone who's actually there, because we see a lot of footage and, there have been clashes. Well, who started the clashes and who was actually doing the clashing when you've got protesters often from two very different sides? Let's talk to Orla Minihane. She's not just the Reform candidate for Epping who attended the protest. She's also a mum, like many of the other women who were at that protest yet again yesterday, rejecting two large-scale group of young undocumented migrants being put into a hotel in the area, the Bell Hotel. A very good afternoon to you, Orla.
Good afternoon, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. Thank you for joining us. I was looking at I know you spoke to Mike last week, and I was looking at your social media content, and it's very, very different from a lot of the reports you see in the media saying clashes outside, asylum hotel. Your footage was very different. It was a lot of mums, a lot of people smiling, videos of people singing Rule Britannia, Come on Eileen, for some reason, which I loved. Tell us what you saw at that protest.
Okay. So there is a really, really dangerous narrative that is being spun around this, and it is being spun by a certain sector of the mainstream media. I've been to every protest. There's been about 5, I think, so far. And yes, the first one was very, very peaceful, and it was all locals. Then the second one, which was the Thursday, where the police were escorting the lefties, if you like, so the protesters up from the station to meet
they were escorting the extremists, because socialist worker people, they are extremists.
Right, exactly. And, the thing is, they're not from Epping. Most of them aren't even from Essex. So they've come to Epping by train. They were met by the police. They're given banners and they're given posters that are all pre-printed. Who's paying for them? They then come up and they walk towards us. When the confrontation started, they then get bussed away. And then the people who are there, the men and the boys and the people who are protecting their communities, are understandably angry. Yeah. So they then clash with the police. And then it's made to look like right-wing thugs have kicked off, blah, blah, blah. So that's when I stood up that day. And I stood up and I stood on the back of a truck and I said, look, this is not what we're here for. This is why we're here. We're here to protect our kids. We're here to protect the community, etc. So that scenario of that rioting and the fighting and the God knows what went on with the police was the thing that everybody has promoted. Everyone's showing. That's the footage everyone's showing. Yeah. Since that night, there has been no trouble whatsoever. Last Thursday, I was with maybe 200, mostly mums. We walked in the rain. We walked from the Bell Hotel up to the council offices where there was a 7 p.m. meeting, and we stood outside. I went into the council chambers and we said, we do not want these undocumented men here. We want our children to be safe. We want our ladies and older ladies to be able to walk their dogs. We want women to be able to walk home from the station at night. That's not too much to ask.
No.
There were hundreds of police, Julia, hundreds of police walking with us in the rain, and all these ladies that you can now see on screen. Yeah. Peacefully, we were chatting to the police. It was fantastic.
Yeah, so it's just very, very different. And the reality is, of course, people, you say there've been 5 protests before, but before the protest started, there's been concern for a long time about this. And not just in Epping, elsewhere as well. People write to the council. We've now got the Police and Crime Commissioner of Essex saying, we want this hotel closed. The hotel originally had a house on asylum seekers, but they were mostly families. It was closed down, and then suddenly, out of the blue, reopened, and it's all young, as you say, undocumented men. And then, of course, we had the allegations of sexual assault against a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. A man has been charged from the hotel. We've seen this elsewhere as well. We've seen some of the crime stats involving other migrants that would suggest there is an issue with young men arriving here illegally who have from cultures which are very alien to our culture, and their attitudes towards young women, teenage girls in particular, is not acceptable to most of us here.
And Julia, the thing is, the things that we've heard about, so those 2 incidents of sexual assault are not the only ones that have happened. They're the ones that have been publicised, but there has been mums that have come up to me in the last few weeks saying, my daughter was this happened to my daughter was grabbed, my daughter was spat at, They've gone to the police and nobody has listened. There is only so long a community, and especially mothers, will tolerate the abuse of their children and their sisterhood.
Well, then we go Mama Grizzly, don't we? Because we have no choice. But here's the thing. Why do you think that the police and the local council, why do you think they haven't been listening? Why do you think they've ignored those concerns?
I think they've ignored those concerns for several reasons. A, because there is this constant rhetoric of, we don't want what happened in Southport last year. We don't want you, be careful. We don't want you to get arrested. Be careful what you say. It might be perceived that you're racist. So people are scared. We've got to a stage now, people don't care, Julia, because they're thinking, if I've got to go and protect my daughter, or I've got to go get arrested and sit in front in a police station, or potentially, go to court, then so be it, because my child means more to me than anything else. And as a mother, you know full well, the most important thing is the safety of your children.
Yeah, and that I think let's face it, for the dads as well, and this is the concern.
And the dads as well, of
Do you
course,
think?
yeah.
I mean, Nigel Farage, you're a Reform candidate as well as a local mum. Nigel Farage has got, again, as always, he points out, the mass scale of illegal, boat arrivals. Everyone in the mainstream media and the mainstream politics shouts racist at him. The British public are going, not racist to be concerned about this. He points out that we could be facing, trouble. The two-tier police can be going. Last year, again, he was right. And British public agree with him, and then he's saying that we could be facing some serious violence, some clashes, if this issue isn't dealt with the people in these migrant hotels. Again, he's right. Anyone paying attention knows he's right, but then he's blamed, oh, well, you might be responsible for some of this happening. Do you think that we are going to see this turning to violent clashes here and elsewhere?
Do you know what, Julia? I think if we were allowed, if concerned parents and concerned siblings and aunts and uncles and grandparents are allowed to demonstrate and show their distaste for what's going on in their local communities, there would not be any violence. We're not going to fight each other, but if the police bring in agitators, then there's going to be trouble.
Yeah, and again, they're very, very critical. They're very critical of what they call the far right arriving, but then they accused a lot of people of that in the Southport riots. And again, as we discovered in reports that have looked into it, it was largely local people. It wasn't people who busted. It wasn't started online, a lot of this. It was just local people who were concerned and upset and angry each time. But again, if it's the far left, those are the good people. Those are the nice people. So that's okay.
Yes. And why are they coming in, Julia? Why are they coming to do what?
Well, they're telling you what you think. They're telling you that you support having undocumented
Let me
men
tell
in
you
your
the
local
most
hotel.
Let me tell you the most hilarious thing. Yesterday, hundreds of them came into Epping. They had banners. One banner said, quote, "The enemy does not come on boats. It comes in limousines."
What does that even mean?
We were laughing. I was like, what? I was saying, is anyone coming in a limousine tonight? Just ridiculous. They came, they were shouting. I can't even repeat on air what they were saying to us. And do you know what we did? I said to the guys at the front, let's not engage. Let's turn our back and walk away. And we did. We put on music. We sang Come On Eileen. Yeah. We were dancing around. They got so angry.
They would have hated that.
15 minutes, they left.
Yeah.
And there was not one bit of no violence.
That is the tip. I think people should be out protesting, but it's got to be peaceful. Don't give these people, don't give the police, don't give the government, don't give the hard left, supposedly anti-fascist, but absolutely supporting every fascist regime going. Don't give them what they want. Stand firm, but stand up for your kids. Really good to talk to you. Thank you so much, Orla Minahan, Reform candidate for Epping, but more importantly, a local mum concerned about these young men, undocumented men in those hotels. Sam Armstrong, it's really interesting to hear from her on that, and this is the way. Peaceful protest. You're in a democracy, peaceful protest. But the authorities seem to be almost intent on stopping these protests being peaceful, because then, of course, they can blame people.
Yeah, and just a message to the mums who are being gaslit, in my view, to be told that this isn't a thing, that these people are no more likely to do anything. There was a report out in today's Sun newspaper, 40% of charges for sexual offences in London, 40% are from foreign nationals.
Yep.
The most overrepresented group are Afghans that have
by a long way,
who have recently come to the UK, and we know that the truth about that has been covered up, officially covered up. So if you have seen these men moving into your neighbourhood, if you are concerned, if there have been evidence in your local community that your children are under threat, be reassured that the evidence, the data, when it is closely scrutinised, backs up your concerns, backs up your fears. There is an issue. These are problems, and you are entitled to expect your government to deal with people breaking into this country and not to allow them to move them into your neighbourhood and leave them there unsupervised around your kids.
I mean, if they're all so great, move them into Downing Street. There you go. That'll solve the problem. The Prime Minister, by the way, on his way right now to meet in Scotland at the Turnberry Golf Course with the Donald Trump. They're running, I think, about 40 minutes late already. These things happen. 12:36. It's time to take a quick break. Going to take your calls. Lots coming in. I know a lot of you want to have your say after what Orla Minahan had to say. Andy and Duncan Smith as well. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. It's 12:39. Just to let you know that we're about to have the arrival of Keir Starmer at the Turnberry Golf Course meeting with, in fact, he's already arrived just in the last couple of moments to meet Donald Trump. Donald Trump has come out of his golf course to meet the Prime Minister. They are going to be having a chat behind the cameras. Then they go in front of the cameras in about half an hour's time, we understand. We'll keep you posted on that. Keep that footage on the screen. If you're watching us on YouTube or your connected device, you can see those images. All very exciting. Oh, it's Take Your Wife to Work Day. Keir Starmer's brought his wife along. Why'd you take your wife along? Does she play golf? I don't know. I've just started learning golf. Maybe you could have taken me along. I'd have happily gone along, Sam Armstrong.
Well, and you're quite good as well, aren't you?
No, I'm absolutely rubbish. I'm rubbish at all sport, but that's not the point. I'm trying. I'm making an effort.
Well, it's clear that the PM is desperately trying to invest in this relationship, and he's taken some real heat for doing so. The challenge is you've gone to all this effort, you've upset everybody. Yeah. What do you actually want to get out of it? Is it a great new trade deal? Is it, a solution to our borders problem? Is it the defence of Europe? No. What we're actually there to go and negotiate is for a little parcel of land several thousand miles away in order that you can prop up your own supporters back home in Britain and the cities.
Yeah, the pro-Hamas lot. But there we are. 12:40 is the time. We'll keep you posted on any developments there. Right now, let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. In particular, calls that we're looking at in terms of what priorities for the Prime Minister, which should be things like illegal migration. Darren is on the line in Wiltshire. A very good afternoon to you, Darren.
Oh, hi, good afternoon, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. What do you want to say, my love?
So, I think it's getting to a stage now where whenever we have protesters, and peaceful or not, and most of them are peaceful, it gives a trigger for the far left. It gives them an opportunity to infiltrate and to create problems.
Yep.
So I was reminiscing, thinking about when I was in the army driving back from Germany. I used to get stuck at the port in France, namely because there would be a load of fishing boats blocking the port because something was happening they didn't agree with, and it would literally bring the country to a grind.
It's either that or the air traffic controllers, isn't it?
Yeah, something along those. Exactly right. So I was thinking, I was speaking to your researcher, and I said, I think what we should do is have like a 30-day or maybe a 60-day amnesty, because obviously the government are on holidays now, bless them. And have a 60-day period of quiet, no protest, but with an ultimatum to say you have this amount of time to come up with a definitive plan and say this is what we're going to do.
They've got a plan. No, they've got a plan, Darren. They're going to smash the gangs. Did you not get the memo?
Well, I heard that, Julia, but I'm not buying into it, I'm afraid, and I'd like just like the rest of the British public. So I think we're getting to a stage where we just literally have to give them an ultimatum, and then if they don't come up and start doing something, then we just bring the country to a halt, and we have a national strike day where people just don't go into work.
Do you know what? I don't think they'd notice that. That's the terrible thing. But you know what? I'm in that territory now. I mean, as long as it's peaceful, always has to be peaceful. We're in a democracy. There's no excuse for things not to be peaceful. But I'm at the point they are simply not listening. They pay lip service. The Tories paid lip service, did nothing about it. Labour don't even pay lip service most of the time, and they're not doing anything about it. But they, we will have to require that they listen. We can do that with the ballot box. But you're right. As some sort of protest of some kind, just say no. We are not going to be, either called a racist or a xenophobe or a bigot for caring about these things, and we're not going to put up with, take them out of the 4-star hotels, put them in 2-star, and then we'll be okay.
No, absolutely, and I look at my late father was a Labour man through and through, and when I visit his grave, I say to him, Dad, I said, I'm really sorry, but I just don't think he would be turning in his grave now, because when I look at Keir Starmer talking, and when I see him in front of the camera, I feel repulsed, because I'm like, he's just totally detached from reality, fella.
Oh, totally.
You haven't got a clue.
Absolutely.
You haven't got a clue.
Absolutely.
Scary times, Julia.
Absolutely, Dan. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that call. Let's go to Dave. He's a little bit further north in South Wales. You want to talk about similar topics?
Well, to me, yes. The thing is that Starmer is digging himself into a hole. As I see it, there is a public demand for control of our borders, which Starmer is totally ignoring. And now that, to me, means he is ignoring democracy.
Yep.
And that is what pays his wages. So as far as I'm concerned, he's taking his money under false pretenses. He's destroying the basis of our government. Not that he understands it, because the relationship between the electorate and the government is the fact that they are our representatives. They're not our rulers.
Thank you.
They're not our bosses. They are our representatives.
And they were elected, as the Tories were, the Labour said they would deal with this issue. They're not dealing with it. They're doing the opposite of dealing with it.
Exactly. So, I mean, I don't think they've got a moral ground to spend another day without a general election. Because they've obviously ignored the public, they've ignored everything else, and we deserve, or we're entitled to, a representative government, not a domineering one.
My thing is the Tories learnt to their cost, if you don't do what we say, if you don't do what you told us you were going to do, we will act accordingly. Thank you for your call. Appreciate that. Dave in South Wales. 12:45 is the time. Sam, I genuinely, both interesting points. I can absolutely feel that there's a turning point, and people are going, we're done now. We're done now. That's it. We're not putting up with this anymore. And it was a really interesting point that Orla Minihane made, that, Mum in Epping, shouting hurty words at us is not going to work anymore. The word racist, the word fascist, the far right, these words have outrageously now, because they've been overused by the left, now have no meaning. And people are not afraid to say, they don't want these people in this country.
Yeah, I think we're long since past the point where you can hide the problem of migration. It's everywhere. I think we're long since past the point when you can hide the decline in people's living standards. I think we've long since past the point where politicians are able to get away with the lies and excuses anymore.
And it's fascinating, though. Things like, we've got the fourth day of the doctor strikes, possibility of nurses' strikes, because what a surprise, the nurses, who haven't been offered as much as the doctors have been offered, might not be happy with a lower offer. I know, we're all shocked by that. But, that's barely made it onto the front pages at all, because people are more concerned about other issues. We just accept we've got a rubbish NHS and the doctors...
We weren't getting appointments before, Julia.
So people, but the stuff that people know... But this ties in, again, another story. I wanted to get to it earlier, but there's an advert that was placed on a government jobs website for a Sharia court manager.
As far as the people of this country are concerned, there is one law in this country, that is British law. We do not have Sharia law. These courts are horrendous, are heinous to women who are forced to remain in abusive relationships for many, many years, whereas a man can say the word talaq 3 times and instantly be free of any obligations. This is a heinous, barbaric way of organising society. It's wrong. But our politicians just won't say it because they are in hock, because there are millions of people that have come into this country that do hold, I'm afraid, it is a significant proportion, every single poll shows it, hold views that are alien to the values of millions of people in this country. And as long as that continues, we are bordering on walking towards a dark place.
We really are. And again, we're not going to be afraid to say it here, because we know it's what people are thinking. We know it's, facts, don't care about your feelings. These are facts. 12:47 is the time. Up next, going to talk about another story involving Donald Trump. He rather wonderfully told Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, yesterday that wind turbines are a con job. And he's right, isn't he? We'll talk about that with the Director of Net Zero Watch up next. This is Talk.
Netflix have pulled the plug on this massive $100 million deal that the Sussexes enjoyed. But the fact that it is now official still comes as a bit of a shock to all of us, but not so much of a shock as it does to the Sussexes, who, I tell you, will struggle now financially.
I feel like this is just a perfect example of karma. They got their karma for sticking 2 fingers up to the royal family, trying to throw their reputation under the bus. And I feel like everything they do now, it just reeks of desperation, which is just so repulsive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, On your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. 12:51 is the time. Just to let you know that Prime Minister Keir Starmer and his wife, I don't know why his wife's there, maybe she likes golf, I don't know, but meeting with President Donald Trump at his Turnberry golf course, and they've been talking. There's a lot of bagpipes going on, so it's rather difficult to hear what they're saying, but one of the things that Donald Trump has said is asked about Gaza. He says, my priority is in Gaza is getting people fed. We've, as you know, given a lot of money to Gaza, food and everything else. A lot of that money is stolen by Hamas, and a lot of the food is stolen. He does say Hamas does not want peace. He's also been asked about boat migrants. He says he doesn't know much about that. He says, but if you've got bad people coming, you should stop that. I mean, mind-blowing policy, eh? Anyway, let's talk about something else he has had to say on wind turbines with our next guest, Andrew Montford. He's director of Net Zero Watch. A very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Let's play a very quick clip. This is what Donald Trump had to say when he was talking about wind turbines in front of the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who is fully signed up to the net zero madness. But here's what President Trump told her when they signed their trade deal.
The other thing I say to Europe, we will not allow a windmill to be built in the United States. They're killing us. They're killing the beauty of our scenery, our valleys, our beautiful plains, and I'm not talking about airplanes, I'm talking about beautiful plains, beautiful areas in the United States, and you look up and you see windmills all over the place. It's a horrible thing. It's the most expensive form of energy. It's no good. They're made in China, almost all of them. When they start to rust and rot in 8 years, you can't really turn them off. You can't bury them. They won't let you bury the propellers, you know, the props, because there's a certain type of fiber that doesn't go well with the land. That's what they say. The environmentalists say you can't bury them because the fiber doesn't go well with the land. In other words, if you bury it, it will harm our soil. The whole thing is a con job.
What an absolute pleasure and a joy that was to listen to, Andrew. What did you make of what he had to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was very well said, wasn't it? And you know, he's right about the core thing. It's a very expensive form of energy, and yes, it does absolutely destroy landscapes. I mean, I live in Scotland, and you know, I find it extraordinary that a country that is so beautiful and relies on that beauty to get in all its tourists is wanting to cover the whole place with wind turbines. It's absolutely bonkers.
I know, and again, there's often, you know, local councils and governments who won't let you sort of change your window design on your home to put in even, you know, double glazing. But that'll ruin the local environment. Oh no, but here's a huge big turbine that could be seen from 100 miles away. I'm fascinated by the fact that the turbines apparently ruined the view from the 18th hole of his Turnberry course, and that's why he particularly cares about it. But of course, he is right, isn't he? And there's the interesting thing, we're talking about, you know, the trade deal that he signed with the EU, and obviously this is going to be coming up in the conversation with Keir Starmer as well, because we still haven't got our UK trade deal officially over the line. Is a lot of this is about, you know, what's been going on with China as well. You know, this dumping of steel, this dumping of you know, these you know, the cheaper Chinese cars, but also they make all the wind turbines, as he's quite rightly says, and the solar panels. But of course, these are all made in China using coal-fired factories.
Yeah, that's right. And I think obviously Trump is trying to change the narrative, the narrative of history, if you like, in a very fundamental way. So he's got this very, very good energy secretary, Chris Wright, who is completely transforming the way America looks at energy, so that, you know, he's trying to bring about a nuclear renaissance. He's expanding gas-fired power. You know, so they're going to get AI in a way that we can just never dream of doing because our electricity is far too expensive. They're going to export all this natural gas to Europe, which is going to be very good geopolitically, because that means that Europe is going to rely on America for its energy rather than Mr. Putin. I mean, you know, he really is being completely transformational here. And I think that's all to the good, really. You know, we don't want the EU relying on Russia.
Yes.
We want the free world sticking together.
But the trouble is, of course, I think a lot of us were rather hopeful, and one of the reasons I would have, if I had been in America, I would have voted for Donald Trump because he was opposed to net zero. He's always just said the whole net zero thing is a scam. He's completely right about this in terms of as a way of tackling climate change. If we are concerned about climate change, net zero ain't going to tackle it, and is massively costly. I hoped that might, kind of lead Britain and Europe to be a bit more sane. On the contrary, this government has doubled down on net zero. European Union has doubled down on net zero. We've signed up to some European Union carbon emission rules, which means that it's going to be more expensive for us, and we're going to face fines and things from Europe. And so we're kind of, Europe is about to make itself, including Britain, poorer. At the same time, America's making itself richer. Meanwhile, they're producing, they're still the biggest country producing oil and gas, making themselves richer. It seems insane that we're not following suit.
Yeah, but I must say, Julia, I think to me this feels almost like the last hurrah of net zero here. I think, that joining on to the EU's emissions trading scheme, which is going to put our energy prices up, and then all Ed Miliband's sort of mad plans to expand the renewables fleet is going to put energy prices up. And with the economy in the state it's in, we just can't carry on like that for much longer. We are going to go completely pear-shaped. And at that point, we are going to have to change course. And we are going to have to say, close the wind and solar farms down, because that is the only way back to growth. The only way back to growth is through cheap energy. And the only way back to cheap energy is getting rid of all the wind and solar farms. If you were a wind and solar investor at the moment, you would be very, very nervous because...
Do you think that if Reform UK is saying, look, if they were elected, and there's a lot of talk about could be coalitions, but if they were elected next time round, all those subsidies will end. Do you think that will start making some of these companies to go, oh, hold on a minute, maybe we might want to think about this, because this could all go completely, just be absolutely gone in a few years' time?
Absolutely. I think investors should be very nervous, and not just because Reform are saying that they're going to do it. I think that the investors have to understand that this is going to become a desperate necessity in a few years' time, because the economy is going to be so bad. We're going to need growth so badly. They are in the firing line. If I were them, I would be trying to get out now, because it's going to be really bad.
Yeah, but right now they're making a fortune. There's money in them thar green hills, is there not? Andrew Montfort, we'll have to leave it there. Director of Net Zero Watch, thank you for that. We've got a very short amount of time. I just want to give people up to date on what Donald Trump has had to say outside Turnberry Golf Course with Keir Starmer and his wife. He has said that, asked about free speech, if it would be discussed today. It's been an issue in social media, and he says free speech is very important, and he says we've had free speech for a very, very long time here, meaning the US, so we're very proud of that and we'll protect it. Asked about the small boats crisis, Keir Starmer, he asked Keir Starmer what the question referred to before adding immigration is a big factor, and I think, frankly, if they're coming from other countries and you don't know who they are they coming from prisons? We had it when they came in from prisons, and we're moving them all out. He says taking a strong stand on immigration is imperative. Sam Armstrong, how big are the chances that Keir Starmer will actually listen?
Well, Keir Starmer seems to have gone on to tell him that he's actually doing a good job, and Donald Trump seems